It was just past midnight when the call came through. The kind of hour when the city feels like it's holding its breath, and even the radio static seems to quiet down. I was sitting alone in the dispatch center, the usual hum of computers and blinking lights the only company. Night shifts aren't glamorous. Mostly it's just waiting, watching, the steady flow of calls that sometimes tell you nothing, and sometimes change everything. When the phone rang, I expected the usual: a wrong number, a crank caller, maybe someone locked out of their car. But when I picked up, there was nothing but heavy breathing on the other end. Slow, deep breaths, like someone was trying to stay calm, or maybe just trying not to make a sound. I said hello, my voice careful, hoping for a response, but all I got was that quiet, ragged breathing. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, so I tried again. Hello? Are you okay? Can you hear me? Still nothing but that breath. I felt a cold prickling at the back of my neck. Usually, a caller like that would hang up or yell, or maybe laugh. But this was different. It was deliberate. Someone was there, and they wanted me to know. I glanced at the clock. 12:07 a.m. The other dispatchers were long gone, their desks empty. Sometimes, the night gets lonely, and your mind fills the space with ghosts. But this wasn't just my mind. The breathing stayed steady, steady enough to be real. I opened the caller ID. No number. Just private. That's usually a bad sign. I tried to trace the call, but the system came back blank. I'd seen that once or twice before, but never with this kind of call. Normally, when someone's scared enough to call 911 and not speak, they're hiding, trapped, or worse. I asked, "If you're there, try to say something." Still nothing. The breathing kept going, slow and heavy, like the person was afraid to move, afraid to breathe too loud. A faint noise bubbled underneath it, almost like a whisper, but I couldn't catch any words. I pulled up the sound recorder to log the call, just in case. The faint background noise kept me alert, some static, maybe a fan or an old air conditioner humming in the distance. Then, a faint clink, like metal tapping against something hard. It was almost rhythmic but slow. I started talking again, my voice softer this time. "You're safe here. Help is coming. Just stay calm." Nothing changed. I checked the map, trying to locate the call. The usual GPS ping was missing. This was off the grid, in every sense. But then, a flicker of data, a rough coordinate near the edge of town, right where the old power plant had been shut down years ago. A place people avoided after sunset. I felt a cold wave sweep through me. That plant had been closed after some incidents. They said it was safe now. But those incidents had left a stain, something the locals whispered about in hushed tones. I dialed my supervisor, but his line was dead. I tried the police dispatch, but no response. My radio crackled once, then fell silent. The power flickered and dimmed, the monitors in front of me blinking out one by one. My heart thumped hard as the breathing on the line deepened, slower now, almost like it was matching mine. I leaned back, trying to shake the dread pressing in. Maybe it was a prank, someone messing with me. But the sound was too real, too raw. The faint whisper came again, this time clearer, but still not words. Like someone trying to speak through thick water. My skin crawled. I whispered, "Who are you? What do you need?" The response was a long pause. Then, the softest sound, a voice, broken and desperate, barely a whisper. "Help." The line went dead. I sat frozen for a long moment. My mind raced. Was this someone trapped? Lost? Or something else? I didn't sleep after that first call. I don't think I even blinked for the next hour. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it again. That slow, deep breathing, the faint whisper that wasn't quite words, and that desperate, broken help. The line cutting off so abruptly had left something open in me, like a wound that wouldn't close. I kept replaying the audio file, leaning closer to my headset, trying to pick apart every sound buried in the background. The hum, the faint static, and that metallic clink. It was strange, not random, not the kind of noise you'd get from a normal environment. 3 slow taps to pause, then 2 more. I even scribbled it down in my notebook. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. It felt deliberate, like a signal. The call had been routed through a dead zone, a spot where normal GPS tracking doesn't work. The coordinates had flashed for just a second before disappearing, right near the old power plant. but I wasn't sure if that was the truth or just some weird glitch. Calls don't just vanish like that, unless someone wants them to. I told myself I wouldn't get involved. That's what they teach you here. You log the call, you send it to the right department, you move on. You're not a detective. You're not a hero. You're a voice. But the silence in that room was so thick that night that I swear it was pushing me toward the phone. Around 2:15 a.m., another call came in. The same private ID. My chest tightened. I hesitated before answering. The moment I said hello, I knew it was them. The breathing was the same, slow, heavy, almost too close to the microphone. But this time, there was movement in the background. At first, I thought it was just shuffling. Then I realized it sounded like footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching on something brittle, like broken glass or gravel. I tried to keep my voice steady. It's me again. I got your last call. If you're hurt, try to say something. The breathing quickened slightly. Not panicked, but aware. Like they'd recognized me. I can send help, I said. But you need to give me something. Anything. A landmark, a street sign. There was a faint thunk, then another. I leaned closer, straining to hear, and realized it was that same pattern again. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. But this time, after the second pause, I heard something else. A faint scraping, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. Where are you? I asked, softer now. For a moment, the breathing stopped entirely. Then, so quiet I almost missed it, came a whisper. There behind me. A sound like a shiver went straight through me. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Who's behind you? The voice didn't answer. Instead, the phone picked up a low, strange sound in the background, something I couldn't immediately place. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't footsteps. It was almost like a wet, dragging inhale. Then the breathing started again, but it wasn't just from the caller anymore. There was another rhythm underneath it. I looked around the empty dispatch room, as if that would help. Every corner felt darker than it had a moment ago. I'm sending help, I said quickly. Don't hang up. Stay on the line. I opened the map system and tried to trace the signal again. For a split second, the coordinates flickered back into view. This time it wasn't exactly the same spot as before. It was further north, along an old service road that ran behind the power plant. The kind of road no one uses anymore. And then the signal moved. It was subtle at first, just a few meters. Then it began to shift faster, like whoever it was had started walking. Okay, I whispered into the mic, you're moving. If you can hear me, keep talking so I can follow you. The caller made a soft, choked sound. Not quite a word, but enough to tell me they were still listening. The background noise grew clearer. The crunch of gravel, the wind cutting through something metallic, and then, faintly, a strange creak like an old, rusted door swinging open. I shivered. The old plant had dozens of those. My screen flashed, connection unstable. I knew I was going to lose them again. I spoke fast. If you can't talk, make the tapping sound. I'll understand. A pause, then tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. The line crackled. I opened the secure logging program, typing in everything I could before the signal dropped. The last sound I caught before the call cut out was different. It wasn't breathing or footsteps or tapping. It was a voice, deep, low, and too close to the receiver, speaking just one word. Closer. The line went dead. The rest of the shift was a haze. I kept checking the logs, replaying the audio, trying to convince myself I'd imagined that last word. But every time I heard it, the tone stayed the same, like it wasn't a warning, like it was a promise. At 4:03 a.m., I sent a private message to a friend of mine on the force, Kevin. He worked nights, too, and he was one of the few people who didn't treat my late shift stories like urban legends. I told him about the call, the taps, the coordinates. He wrote back, "Don't go near that road." When I asked why, he didn't answer for a long time. Then, finally, last guy who went out there never came back. I stared at the message until my eyes burned. It felt ridiculous. I worked in emergency services. I should be the one telling people what not to be afraid of. But something about the way Kevin had written it, no joking, no filler. I believed him. Still, belief didn't stop my curiosity from growing. By the time my shift ended, the sky outside was still black. I drove home, but I didn't turn on any music. I just kept listening to the silence in my car, half expecting to hear that breathing again. While I got inside my apartment, the first thing I did was check my phone. No new calls, but there was a voicemail. No number, just unknown. I played it. It was 3 seconds long. Breathing. Then the tapping. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. And under it, something else. Something I didn't notice until I played it a second time with the volume up all the way. A whisper, right against my ear. Behind you. The next night, I came in early. I told myself it was so I could catch up on paperwork, but the truth was, I needed to know if the calls would come again. The day's shift had been uneventful. The handoff was normal. The other dispatcher gave me the standard report. A couple of noise complaints, one domestic disturbance, nothing unusual. She didn't mention any strange calls. I almost asked her if she'd noticed anything weird lately, static on the lines, odd noises in the background, but I didn't. I didn't want to sound like I was fishing for ghosts. By the time the clock hit midnight, the center was dead quiet. Outside, a light snow had started falling, and it muffled the already sparse traffic. I had 3 monitors in front of me: the call queue, the incident map, and the audio log software. Everything was still. That was when the first flicker happened. It was quick, the overhead fluorescence dimming for just half a second before coming back. I thought maybe the snow was messing with the grid. This building was old, and the wiring had a history of acting up in storms. But then it happened again. This time it wasn't just the lights. My computer screens blinked out for a second before returning. The heater in the corner groaned and sputtered before starting up again. I checked the breaker panel in the utility closet. Everything was fine. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing behind me when I opened that closet door. Not close enough to touch, just there. I even turned my head slightly, expecting to see movement. There was nothing. When I got back to my desk, the phone rang. 911. What's your emergency? I asked. Silence. But not complete silence. There was breathing, faint, ragged, just like before. Is this the same person who called last night? I asked quietly, like raising my voice might break something fragile. No answer. Then, faintly, the tapping again. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. I felt my skin tighten. Where are you? The breathing quickened. Then came the faintest whisper, low and slurred, like someone speaking through a fever. There in the lights. The line went dead. I stared at the receiver for a long time before setting it back down. I was still thinking about those words when the power went out completely. The room plunged into darkness. Not the soft kind where you can still make out shapes. This was thick, absolute. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face. The hum of the computers died. The heater clicked off. And in that sudden silence, I heard it. A shuffle. Not on my headset. Not on the phone. In the room. It was soft, deliberate, like someone moving along the far wall. I froze, my ears straining. My eyes were useless in the dark, but I swear I could feel the space around me change, like something had stepped closer. Then the lights flickered back on. I whipped my head toward the sound, but the room was empty. Almost. There was a shadow on the wall that didn't match anything in the room. It was tall, narrow, and wrong. Its edges weren't sharp, but frayed, like smoke curling away from flame. And it wasn't still. It shimmered slightly, as though it was breathing. I blinked hard, and it was gone. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure I wouldn't hear the next call if it came. I forced myself to sit back down, to look at my screens like nothing had happened. But then the flicker came again, and this time, the shadow was closer. It wasn't on the wall anymore. It was stretched across my desk, spilling over my keyboard and monitor, moving like it was crawling toward me. I pushed my chair back so fast it slammed into the wall. The lights steadied, and it vanished again. I just stood there, breathing hard, trying to convince myself it was some kind of trick. The power grid, my tired eyes, stress from the calls. Anything but what it felt like. I almost called Kevin. I had my phone in my hand, thumb hovering over his contact, when the monitors lit up with an incoming call. No number. No ID. I answered, my voice shaking. 911. What's your emergency? There was no breathing this time. Just a faint, low hum, the kind of transformer makes right before it blows. Then, under it, a voice I didn't recognize. It was deep, slow, too close to the mic. Don't let them in. The line went dead before I could speak. I sat there with the receiver still pressed to my ear, my knuckles white. The words played over and over in my head. Don't let them in. The lights flickered again, but now it wasn't just a flicker. They pulsed. Dim, bright, dim again in a steady rhythm. And each time they dimmed, the shadow returned larger, closer. On the third pulse, it was right beside me. I didn't hear it. I didn't feel it, but I knew it was there. It was like standing next to something colder than the air, something that made the space around it heavier. I could see the edge of it out of the corner of my eye, a wavering blackness that seemed to reach toward me. The lights flared back to full, and I was alone again. Except, I wasn't, because the phone rang immediately. And when I answered, I didn't even speak. I just listened. It was my own voice on the line. Not an echo, not a recording. My voice, whispering words I hadn't said yet. They're already inside. I didn't plan on going out there. That's the truth. For nights, I told myself I was just a voice on the other end. I wasn't meant to leave this desk, to chase shadows down forgotten roads. My job was to take calls, log incidents, and pass them along to the people who deal with danger face to face. But after that last call, my own voice whispering they're already inside, something in me snapped. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was this gnawing, restless need to see where it was coming from. The coordinates had flashed on my screen twice now, each time in the same area, north of the old power plant, along the broken service road. The dead zone. The place Kevin told me not to go. By the end of my shift, I was pacing. I couldn't stop hearing the tapping in my head. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. I thought maybe if I went there, I'd find something to explain it all. A squat radio tower, an abandoned house. Maybe some idiot with a signal jammer and too much free time. Something real. The roads were empty when I left. Snow crunched under my tires. My headlights cut through a wall of white flakes, and beyond that, it was just darkness. The service road entrance wasn't marked anymore. I only found it because my GPS briefly glitched and froze, the same way the call map had done. The road itself was barely more than a pair of ruts in the snow, lined with skeletal trees that clawed at the sky. The deeper I went, the worse the static in my radio got. I brought my handheld just in case, but all I could hear was a faint hiss, and under it, the low hum of something electrical. The power plant appeared like a shadow growing out of the dark. The main structure was a hulking shape, black against black, its windows boarded over. A few rusted maintenance sheds leaned to one side, their roofs half collapsed. When I stepped out of the car, the cold hit me like a wall. But it wasn't just cold, it felt heavier here, like the air had more weight to it. The wind died the second I crossed the chain-link fence. The world went quiet in a way that made my ears ring. No crunch of snow under my boots, no rustle of branches. Just nothing. And then the lights went. Not just my flashlight, everything. My car headlights, my watch backlight, the little LED on my radio. They didn't fade. They died. I stood in the black, heart pounding, turning in slow circles. My flashlight still felt solid in my hand, but when I thumbed the switch, there was nothing. The hum in the air got louder, and with it came the tapping. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. It was close now. Too close. Like it was being made just a few feet away. Hello. My voice sounded wrong here, swallowed before it could carry. The tapping stopped, and then the breathing began. I knew that breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. It came from somewhere ahead, though in the dark there was no ahead, just more black. Who's there? My voice was shaking now. A faint voice answered, just like before. But this time, it wasn't begging. It wasn't even urgent. It was waiting. Closer. I stepped forward before I realized I was moving. Something in the dark shifted with me, just at the edge of where my eyes should be able to see. Every few steps, the static in my radio would spike, and under it I'd hear fragments of voices. Not just one. Not just the caller. Dozens, maybe more. Whispering, overlapping, each word half swallowed by noise. Don't let them. Behind. Help. The hum rose until I felt in my teeth. My skin prickled, my vision swam. The air was colder now, but sweat slid down my neck. And then the shadows moved. I don't mean in the way shadows shift when light changes. There was no light here. They moved like living things, stretching across the ground toward me, lifting against the walls of the plant, spilling over each other in long, reaching shapes. One of them broke away from the rest. It was tall, narrow, its edges rippling like smoke. And it was walking, not rushing, not lunging, just walking straight toward me with the kind of patience that says it knows you won't leave. I stumbled back, fumbling for my radio, but all I got was a blast of static so sharp it made me drop it. The shadow stopped a few feet away. I could feel it there, not heat, not cold, but an absence, like it was eating whatever was left of the air between us. And then it spoke. Not aloud, not in my ears. Inside. You heard us. I wanted to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My mind was screaming at me to turn around, to find my way back to the car, but my body stayed locked in place. The other shadows began to gather. I could hear them now, each with that same slow breathing. They closed in, not rushing, just surrounding. You answer, the voice said. So we call. I shook my head, but I didn't know if it could even see me. I'm not. You are. The tapping started again, all around me now. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. And then the breathing multiplied. It wasn't 2 or 3 voices now, it was dozens. All breathing in time, the sound filling every corner of the dark. Something brushed my hand. I yanked back, but the feeling stayed, like the touch had sunk under my skin. You stay, the voice said. No, I whispered. The shadows didn't laugh. They didn't react. They just kept breathing, that patient rhythm like the ocean in my ears. And then, all at once, the dark shifted. I was standing in the dispatch center again. My monitors glowed. The heater hummed in the corner. The phone was ringing. I picked it up without thinking. Heavy breathing. Tap, 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 pause, tap, tap. I slammed the receiver down, my heart pounding, and ran to the window. Outside, the parking lot was gone. In its place was the black silhouette of the power plant. And in the windows, the shadows were still moving. I've taken thousands of calls in my time as a dispatcher. Some are short, some are messy, and some never really end. It started on a Tuesday night, which should have been slow. The kind of shift where you drink bad coffee, wait for the phone to ring, and tell yourself it's better when it doesn't. I had the night desk, alone in the back corner of the comms room. I liked that spot because it felt tucked away from the noise of the other operators. My screen glowed in front of me, pale blue light washing over the desk. The hum of the old ceiling vent was steady, almost hypnotic. I was halfway through entering a follow-up report when the line lit up. I slipped the headset on, hit the key. 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause. No background noise. Just the faint hiss of static. Then my own voice answered. Not someone who sounded like me. It was me. 911. What's your emergency? The voice repeated back, perfectly. I froze. It wasn't like a prank where someone mimics you and slips up. It was exact. The same cadence, the same tiny inhale I'd just taken, the same scratch in my throat from the dry air. It was like someone had recorded me in real time and sent it back through the line. But it didn't stop there. The voice spoke again. You're not the real one. It didn't sound threatening, just matter of fact, like someone pointing out that your shoelace is untied. I sat back in my chair, heartbeat loud in my ears. Who is this? I asked. You're not the real one, it repeated. I am. I wanted to hang up. I should have hung up. But something about the voice, about my voice, held me in place. I glanced toward the supervisor's desk across the room. Dark. Empty. No one else around. Is this some kind of joke? I asked. The voice chuckled softly. I never realized how unsettling my own laugh could sound until I heard it coming from someone, or something else. It's not a joke, it said. I'm calling to warn you. My throat tightened. Warn me about what? There was a faint rustle, like the mic brushing against fabric. Then, you're about to disappear. I stared at the waveform flickering on my screen. That's not funny, I said, but my voice cracked halfway through. It's not supposed to be, the other me said. There was a pause. I've been here before. This room, this desk. I thought I was the one answering the call, but I was the call. I gripped the edge of the desk, so hard my knuckles hurt. What are you talking about? I'm you, it said again. And I'm stuck. I've been stuck since the night I got this call. I thought it was just another strange one. I stayed on the line too long. The room suddenly felt colder. The vents were still humming, but I could see my own breath in the dim light. You have to hang up, the voice said urgently. You have to. The line clicked. Silence. No static, no dial tone, nothing. I yanked the headset off and stared at it like it might bite me. My hands were shaking. The clock on the wall read 1:37 a.m. I tried to go back to my report, but my eyes kept drifting to the phone. At 1:44, the line lit up again. I didn't want to answer. My stomach turned at the thought. But that's the job, you answer. Always. 911. What's your emergency? Static. Then my own voice again. You didn't listen. I shot up from my chair, scanning the room. No one was there. No one had touched the recording system. What do you want? I asked. To take my place back, it said simply. I could hear faint breathing on the line, perfectly matched to my own, except it was just slightly off. Like one of us was a fraction of a second behind the other. You're making no sense, I said, trying to sound firm. But my voice was trembling. It will make sense when you're here, it said. In the quiet. In the dark. Where the calls come from. I almost laughed, just to shake the tension, but then the lights above me flickered. Once. Twice. And for a split second, I thought I saw movement in the reflection on my monitor. Not behind me. In the screen. A pale face. My face. Leaning in from the side. Lips moving in perfect sync with the voice in my ear. I ripped the headset off again and shoved my chair back, so fast it toppled. The phone was still lit. The line was still open. But the voice kept speaking, even without my headset on. You can't run from a call, dispatcher, it said. Especially not your own. The light steadied. The face was gone. But the line stayed active for the rest of the night. No matter what I did, I couldn't clear it. I unplugged the system. I shut down my station. Still, the call sat there, open. And sometimes, even without the headset, I swear I could still hear my own voice whispering from the receiver. The first time it happened, I told myself it was a glitch. That's what they say in dispatch when something doesn't make sense. Must be a glitch. Static on the line? Glitch. Calls cutting out? Glitch. You learn to say it enough times until you start believing it. But this wasn't static. It wasn't a deadline. It was my voice. It was the third call of the night. Nothing special. Some guy out near the highway reporting a drunk driver. My headset clicked, the line opened, and I went through my usual script. 911, what's your... And then, at the exact same time, in my ear, in perfect unison, I heard. 911, what's your... It was me. The same pitch, the same rhythm, like an echo that didn't wait for me to finish before speaking. I froze, but training kicked in. I pushed forward, talked over it, logged the call, sent a unit. The voice didn't come back. Not on that call, but I could still feel it. The way you feel the last note of a song long after it stopped playing. I told myself I was just tired. I had been picking up doubles, trading shifts, barely sleeping. Maybe my brain was lagging. But the next call proved it wasn't my brain. It was a welfare check. An older woman said her neighbor hadn't come home in 2 days. The line clicked. 911, what's your emergency? I said, and then, in my ear, 911, what's your emergency? Same voice. My voice. But it wasn't late this time. It spoke with me. Perfectly timed. Like it already knew what I was going to say. My throat tightened. I kept talking, kept taking notes. The woman didn't seem to notice anything. The echo wasn't in her voice. It was in mine. By the 5th call, I was sweating. By the 10th, I couldn't focus on what the callers were saying anymore. Every single one, no matter what kind of call it was, domestic, accident, noise complaint, every time I opened my mouth, it opened too. It didn't just repeat me. It was me, but it wasn't normal. It was too sharp, too exact. When I spoke, my voice carried the little imperfections of breath, the small hesitations that happen when you're human. This one didn't. It was clean, like a perfect recording. But not of me now. It was like hearing my own voice from a version of myself that didn't have to think before speaking. Almost like it was reading a script I hadn't written yet. And it started changing. Not much, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me. Sometimes, it would finish my sentence half a second before I did. Other times, it would skip ahead, saying the next word just before it left my mouth. It was subtle, but once you notice it, you can't unhear it. I stopped talking between calls. I didn't want to hear myself. I started drinking more water, clearing my throat, pretending I was just sick. But deep down, I wasn't scared of the sound itself. I was scared of the intent behind it. It wasn't random. It was learning. One night, during a call about a missing child, I slipped up. I stuttered on a word, police, and for the first time, the echo didn't copy me. It said it perfectly. No stutter. No mistake. Almost like it was correcting me. That's when I realized. It wasn't an echo at all. It was another version of me. One that didn't make mistakes. I tried telling a co-worker about it during our 2 a.m. coffee break. We were standing by the vending machine, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. I told him my headset was acting weird, that I kept hearing my own voice in calls. He shrugged, said, "Probably feedback," and went back to his drink. But then he looked at me and added, "Just make sure you're getting enough sleep, man. Sometimes you hear things when you're tired." That word stuck with me. Sometimes. Like maybe he'd been through it too. By the next shift, it was worse. The voice didn't just echo me anymore. It started talking when I didn't. I'd be listening to a caller explain their emergency, and suddenly, my voice would cut in, saying something I hadn't said yet. Small things at first. Asking for their address before I did. Repeating a detail I hadn't gotten to yet. But then it began answering for me. One call still sits in my head. It was a noise complaint. Some guy in an apartment building heard screaming in a unit above him. I opened the line, started to ask for details, but my voice, that other voice, cut in. It said, "Stay in your apartment. Lock the door. Don't let her in." The caller went dead silent. Then he whispered, "So, you know about her?" I swear I didn't say a word. I was staring at the console, my hands frozen over the keyboard. The other me had just taken over. The rest of the call felt like I was underwater. I could hear my own voice talking, my voice telling the man things I didn't understand. Things like, she can hear the phone, and if you look at her face, it's already too late. When the line disconnected, I just sat there. My headset was still warm against my ear. The room felt too quiet. The only sound was my own breathing. But for a moment, I swear I heard it breathing too. After that night, I started to notice something even worse. The echo wasn't just in the calls anymore. It was in my head. Sometimes, when I was alone, I'd hear it. Not out loud, not exactly. It was like remembering the sound of your own voice from a recording you hate, but instead of fading, it stayed. It would say little things, like reminding me what to say before I said it, correcting my words in my own thoughts. I started wondering if maybe I wasn't the real one. I know how that sounds. But when you spend hours a day listening to a version of yourself that sounds more certain, more in control, more right than you start to question who's faking it. I tried to fight it. On calls, I'd speak faster or slower, change the way I phrase things just to throw it off. But it didn't stumble. It adapted. If I spoke fast, it matched me. If I slowed down, it spoke just ahead, like it was leading me. And then, 2 weeks after the first echo, it said something that broke me. It was another welfare check, another lonely voice on the other end. I was halfway through the usual questions when the other me spoke over me and said, "You're not supposed to be here." It wasn't talking to the caller. It was talking to me. I froze. My hands were shaking so badly I hit the wrong key and muted myself. But the other voice kept talking. "This is my shift. My calls. You're just noise." I tore the headset off. I could still hear it. Not through the speakers. Inside, I didn't finish the shift. I told my supervisor I was sick, went home, sat in my car in the dark driveway for over an hour, just to listening. Not to the night, to myself. Or maybe to it. And here's the part one can't explain. Since that night, I haven't been able to tell if the words coming out of my mouth are mine. Sometimes, I'll say something, and a second later I'll realize I didn't decide to say it. Like my brain is just along for the ride. It's still there, still repeating. And I can't tell which one of us is supposed to stop. I've always thought buildings have a certain sound to them when they're empty. Not silence. Silence doesn't exist in a place like this. There's the hum of the fluorescent lights, the distant click of the heating system, the faint pop of metal expanding in the walls. All these small, familiar noises that you barely notice until something unfamiliar cuts through them. That night, The unfamiliar sound was footsteps. Not heavy boots. Not quick, sharp heels. They were the same kind of steps I make when I'm walking across the dispatch floor. Soft rubber soles. The faint drag on the carpet. Even the slight squeak on the linoleum near the kitchenette. I remember looking up from my desk when I first heard them. It was past 2 in the morning, and we'd already gone hours without a single active emergency. I was the only one on shift. The other operator, Stan, had clocked out just after midnight. He gave me a lazy wave and told me to hold down the fort, then left through the back door. No one else was supposed to be here. At first, I told myself it was just the building settling. Old floorboards shifting, maybe the janitor. But the janitor's shift is in the afternoon. At night, this place belongs to me, the machines, and the static. Still, I got up from my chair and leaned over the divider to glance toward the hallway. Nothing. Just a long stretch of gray carpet, lit in that sickly green glow from the exit signs. I sat back down and told myself to focus. Except the footsteps started again. And this time, they were moving in a way I recognized. Not just footsteps, my footsteps. It's hard to explain, but I walk with a slight rhythm. Not fast, not slow. 3 steady steps, then a faint pause, then 2 quicker ones. A habit I picked up somewhere without thinking about it. The sound out there in the hallway had the same pattern. 3 steps, pause, 2 quick ones. I waited, frozen, listening. The steps stopped exactly when I leaned forward in my chair. I don't know why, but that scared me more than if they'd just kept going. I called out, just a casual hello, with enough forced confidence to mask my unease. My voice echoed faintly down the hall. Nothing came back. And then, softly, the steps started again. This time, they didn't stay in the hallway. They came closer. The sound reached the edge of the dispatch room, then stopped. I turned my chair slowly toward the entrance, expecting something. No one was there. The doorway was empty. I stood up, took a step forward, and that's when I heard it directly behind me. One single footstep. I spun around so fast my chair rolled into the desk. Nothing. Just the glowing monitors and the empty chairs. I told myself I was overtired, that I'd been sitting in this dim room for too long, letting my brain play tricks. I sat back down, pushed the hair out of my face, and tried to focus on the blinking console in front of me. Then the phone rang. I picked it up out of pure muscle memory. 911. What's your emergency? But the voice that answered wasn't frantic or scared. It was mine. 911. What's your emergency? It said, perfectly in sync, like I was listening to a recording of myself. I didn't speak. My throat went dry. The silence stretched. The voice spoke again, just a little slower this time. What's your emergency? My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I slammed it back onto the cradle. The instant the receiver clicked, I heard it. Footsteps again. Only this time, they didn't sound like they were in the hallway. They were in here, inside the dispatch room. I turned in a slow circle, scanning every shadow between the cubicles, every corner where the weak light didn't quite reach. The sound seemed to move with me, always just a few steps away, just out of sight. I walked toward the far wall. The sound followed. When I stopped walking, the sound stopped too. I tested it, pacing slowly between the desks. Every single move I made was mirrored. Not perfectly, a half-second delay, like whoever, or whatever, was doing it was studying me, making sure to copy exactly. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I just stood there, my skin crawling, my heart pounding so hard I could hear in my ears. Finally, I forced myself to speak. Who's there? The words came out shaky. From somewhere to my left, in the dark, came my own voice. Who's there? It wasn't an echo. It was too delayed, too deliberate. I grabbed my flashlight from the desk and flicked it on, aiming it between the cubicles. The beam cut through dust in the air, lighting up empty chairs, abandoned mugs, stacks of paperwork. No one. I swept the light toward the kitchenette. Nothing but the little fridge humming in the corner. The footsteps had stopped. I stood there in the center of the room, trying to steady my breathing, telling myself that I was in control, that I was safe. Then, from the hallway, I heard the sound again. Not walking this time, running, and it was running directly toward me. I aimed the flashlight at the doorway, bracing myself. But when the sound reached the threshold, nothing entered. The beam showed only the empty carpet. I took one careful step toward the hallway, and from deep in the building, farther down the corridor, I heard a voice. My voice, calling my name, not in a whisper, not in a scream, just casual, like how you'd call to a co-worker from the next room. Hey, my stomach turned cold. I wanted to ignore it, just shut the door and lock it. But my feet started moving on their own. I walked down the hall, every step sounding too loud against the quiet. The exit sign ahead glowed faintly, casting a green tint over the carpet. The air felt heavier the farther I went, like I was walking underwater. I reached the corner where the hallway turns toward the supply closet and the break room. And there, just before the bend, I saw something move. It was quick, just the edge of a shoulder, vanishing out of sight. But it was enough to make my breath catch. I rounded the corner. Empty. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with closed office doors. And then, faintly, I heard it again. Footsteps. But now they weren't behind me or beside me. They were inside the walls. It was impossible. They moved right along with me, just on the other side of the plaster, perfectly in sync. Every time I took a step, I heard a faint thud from inside the wall to my left. I stopped. It stopped. I took 2 quick steps. 2 quick thuds followed. I could feel it now, something watching me from behind the wall, keeping pace. I backed away slowly, never taking my eyes off the spot. I must have walked half the length of the building before I realized I'd been holding my breath. When I finally turned back toward the dispatch room, I almost screamed, because at the far end of the hallway, standing under the exit sign, was a figure. Not shadow, not silhouette. It was me. Same uniform, same hair, same way of standing, one hand in my pocket, the other hanging loose at my side. Even from this distance, I could see its face. My face. It didn't blink. It didn't move. I couldn't move either. My mind was a mess of disbelief and panic. Then it smiled. It was my smile, but wrong. Too wide, too slow, like it had to think about how to do it. I blinked, and it was gone. The hallway was empty again. I ran back to the dispatch room, slammed the door, and locked it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. For the rest of the shift, I didn't move from my chair. I kept the flashlight on, aimed toward the door, listening for the smallest sound. But nothing else happened. No footsteps, no voices, no phone calls. Just the hum of the lights, the distant click of the heating system, and the faint pop of metal in the walls. And I told myself that was all it had ever been. I had to. Because if I thought about what I really saw, I don't think I'd ever come back to this building again. That I don't remember exactly when I stopped believing it was a prank. Maybe it was the night the phone rang with my own voice on the other end. Or maybe it was long before that. In those small, quiet moments when the building seemed to know I was alone, and it used that knowledge like a weapon. That night, the air felt heavier than usual. The overhead lights buzzed in a lazy, irregular way, flickering just enough to make me think the shadows were moving. I kept telling myself it was just a long shift, that my mind was running out of places to rest. But even then, I think I knew I was circling something I couldn't avoid. It was after 2 a.m. when the line lit up. No ringing this time, just the red glow of the call indicator, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. I slipped on the headset and said the words I'd said 1,000 times before. 911, what's your emergency? There was silence. And then my voice. 911, what's your emergency? The same tone, the same rhythm, the same pause after the 9. I sat there, not breathing. This had happened before. I'd heard it before. But something was different now. There was no delay, no faint echo like a bad connection. It was in sync with me, as if we were speaking together, breath for breath. I tried again. Who is this? My voice from the other end. Who is this? Every hair on my arms rose. I reached for the mute button, thinking maybe I could catch them saying something else when I wasn't speaking. But the second I went silent, the other end stayed silent too. I could hear breathing though. Not mine. Mine was shallow, ragged. This one was slow, deliberate. Almost like they were pretending to breathe. I kept the line open, staring at the dark window in front of my desk, the one that reflected my workstation back at me like a dim mirror. If I leaned forward just enough, I could see my own face in the glass. And I swear, I saw my lips move, even though I wasn't speaking. I ripped the headset off. The call line was still lit, still pulsing. I reached for the hang-up key, but before I could press it, the sound came through the open speakers, a whisper so soft I thought I was imagining it. "You're in my seat." I froze. It didn't sound like me anymore. It was lower, rougher, but it still carried the exact inflections of my voice, like someone was trying to wear it like a mask. My first instinct was to check the hallway. The whole building was supposed to be empty except for me. The night patrol had come and gone an hour ago. I stepped into the hall, headset still dangling from my shoulder, listening. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps, perfectly matched to mine. Every step I took echoed with another, a half beat behind, as if someone was following close enough to copy, but not close enough to touch. I turned, but the hallway stretched empty in both directions. The sound stopped too. I walked toward the break room. The footsteps returned, the same lag, the same mimicry. I tried changing my pace, taking 2 quick steps, then 1 slow. The other set matched me perfectly. By the time I reached the break room door, my heart was slamming so hard in my chest, I thought I might black out. The light was off inside, but the hum of the vending machine was steady. And there, faintly, I saw it. Through the reflection in the vending machine's glass. A shape standing just behind me. It was me. Same hair, same headset still draped over one shoulder. Same little crease between the brows that I'd started noticing in the mirror lately. But the smile wasn't mine. I spun around, nothing. The hallway was empty again. I didn't go back to the dispatch room right away. I didn't want to see that reflection in the glass again. Instead, I went to the supply closet where the signal box for the phone lines was mounted. My idea, my desperate, shaky idea, was to kill the connection entirely. When I opened the closet door, the smell hit me first. Not dust, not chemicals. Something sour, old, like the inside of a damp basement. The phone line panel was lit, but one of the cables had been unplugged. Not torn, just removed. And in its place, the loose end of the cable was coiled neatly, like someone had taken care to arrange it that way. I knew then, whatever was on that line wasn't coming from outside the building. It was here. I went back to the dispatch room, my hands shaking so badly I had to steady them on the edge of the desk. The call line was still lit, still waiting. I didn't want to pick it up again, but I had to know. I pressed the headset to my ear. My voice, spoke immediately. "You found me." I swallowed hard. "What do you want?" It laughed. It sounded exactly like me when I'm trying to pretend I'm not nervous. A little too high-pitched, a little too quick. "I want to see you leave." I glanced at the clock. 2:46 a.m. Too early to just clock out and go home without someone asking why. "I'm not leaving," I said, though my throat felt tight around the words. "You will." The line went dead. The light on the panel clicked off. I yanked the headset away like it was burning me. My chest hurt from holding my breath. And then, the sound came from the hallway. My voice, calling my own name. I stepped into the hall again, and this time I saw it. Not in a reflection, not in some half glimpse. It was me, standing at the far end of the corridor, one hand pressed to the wall like it was keeping its balance. It started walking toward me, and with every step, it repeated exactly what I was thinking, just a second before I could say it. Not my words out loud, my thoughts. Every ugly, terrified thought I'd been trying to bury all night. "You should run. It's faster than you. You'll never make it to the door." I backed into the dispatch room, heart hammering, fumbling for the lock, but there was no lock. The thing stepped into the doorway, still wearing my face, still whispering the inside of my head back to me. I grabbed the nearest object, my coffee mug, and threw it. It shattered against the doorframe, hot liquid splashing across the carpet. The thing didn't flinch. It just tilted its head like it was studying me. And then it spoke, in a voice that was still mine, but somehow full. Like it wasn't coming from a throat anymore, but from the air itself. "Now you know what it's like to answer a call you can't hang up." It stepped forward. The lights above us flickered, and for a moment its face slipped. Not gone, not replaced with something monstrous, but wrong. Too many teeth. Eyes a shade too dark. Skin just slightly too tight across the bones. I stumbled back, but it didn't follow. It just stood there, watching, until the lights steadied again. And then it was gone. The phone line lit up one last time. I didn't answer it, that I've taken thousands of calls in my life. You'd think they'd all blend together after a while. Car wrecks, heart attacks, the usual fights that spiral out of control. And in some ways, they do. But once in a while, one slips under your skin. The night started like any other shift. I'd been on since 10 p.m., the screens in front of me glowing in that cold blue light that never changes, no matter how late it gets. My headset was warm from my last call, and I was just sipping my coffee when the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency? At first, all I heard was the sound of someone breathing hard. The line hissed softly in my ear, like wind against a mic. Then a man's voice broke through, panicked. There's a fire, he gasped. Oh God, my house is on fire. I went into routine mode. Sir, I need you to stay calm. Can you give me your address? He rattled off, Maple Drive, number 42. I typed it in. While I relayed the info to dispatch, I asked, is anyone else inside with you? My wife, he said. She's in the bedroom. I tried to get her, but the hallway, he started coughing deep and wet. It's filling with smoke. I can't. Sir, listen to me. You need to stay low to the ground. Cover your mouth with a cloth if you can. Help is on the way, just... There was a strange sound in the background. It wasn't fire. It wasn't the roar of flames or the crackle of wood. It was a faint tapping, almost like someone was knocking on glass. Sir, are you still there? The man didn't answer right away. Then he whispered, almost to himself, there in the hall. My fingers froze over the keyboard. Who's in the hall? Silence. Sir. The line went dead. The moment it cut out, my stomach tightened. Calls drop all the time, but something about that one, the way his voice dropped, the way he said it didn't feel right. I checked with the fire crews. They were already en route, sirens screaming in the distance. I sat there staring at the blinking cursor on my notes, trying to shake it off. But when the fire captain called back in, his voice was different. Control, we've got a problem, he said. House is well, it's standing. No sign of fire. No smoke. We knocked. No answer. Neighbors say the place has been empty for months. I looked at my screen. 42 Maple Drive? Affirmative. Place is locked up tight. Looks like nobody's lived here for a while. I told him about the call I'd just taken, about the man's voice, about his wife in the bedroom. The captain just went quiet for a moment, then said, we're checking the perimeter. We'll let you know. They didn't find anyone. Not a single footprint in the snow around the house. The official report just called it a false alarm. But I couldn't stop hearing his voice in my head. There in the hall. I tried to tell myself it was a prank call. People do it. They get a kick out of making us scramble emergency services for no reason. But usually those calls sound different. They're rushed, sloppy. The panic is fake, exaggerated. This one didn't sound like that. It sounded real. I kept replaying it in my mind. The way the tapping came through, faint but steady. I almost wondered if it was just the fire popping wood, except there was no fire. By 1 a.m., I'd handled a few more calls, but my mind kept drifting back. I even hovered over the call log, thinking about pulling the recording to listen again. But part of me didn't want to hear it. Around 2:14 a.m., the line lit up again. I clicked in. 911, what's your emergency? There was a pause. Then a man's voice. My house is on fire. I froze. It wasn't just similar. It was the same voice, the same panic, the same gasping for air. Sir, I began, but he cut me off, rambling the address. Maple Drive, 42. My skin went cold. Sir, I said slowly, have you called us before tonight? He didn't answer the question. My wife's inside. She's in the bedroom. I tried to get her, but the hallway. It was identical, word for word. I grabbed the playback from earlier in the shift, matching in my head. Even the cough was in the same place. The same ragged sound. The tapping was back too. Tap, tap, tap. Only now, I counted. About 3 seconds between each one. I felt my hand start to shake. Sir, can you hear me? Who's in the hall? Just like before, he whispered, there in the hall. And then the line went dead. My supervisor noticed how pale I looked. What's wrong? She asked. I told her. She frowned, leaned over, and pulled up the logs. Both calls showed up on the system, but here's the thing. The second one didn't have a source number. It just read, unknown origin. We're not supposed to chase things like that. If it's a malfunction or a prank, it goes in the report and gets passed to the tech team. But I couldn't let it go. I called the fire department myself. The captain picked up, tired but curious. I told him what happened. He swore they hadn't been called out again to Maple Drive that night. Then he said something that made my skin prickle. We checked that house after your first call. Just to be thorough, we went inside. Found some old furniture, dust everywhere. But in the bedroom, he paused. There was an old rotary phone on the nightstand. Unplugged, cord cut, but the receiver was off the hook. I didn't tell him, but the image stuck with me the rest of the shift. A phone that couldn't work, a line that couldn't connect, and a man's voice somehow calling me, twice. At 3 a.m., I went on break. The dispatch center was quiet, the kind of dead silence that makes you hear your own breathing too loud. I walked to the vending machine just to move, just to feel like I was somewhere else. But when I came back to my station, my headset was lying on the desk. I swear I left it hanging. The little green light was blinking. I sat down, hesitated, then slid on. Hello. Nothing. Just the faint hiss of an open line. I almost pulled it off when I heard it. So quiet I thought I imagined it. Tap, tap, tap. 3 seconds between each. And then, under it, a breath. Not mine. Can you see them? It wasn't the man's voice. It was a woman. I yanked the headset off so fast it clattered to the desk. My supervisor looked over, eyebrows raised, but I just shook my head and muttered something about static. I didn't put it back on until the green light stopped blinking. The rest of the shift dragged. Every time the line lit up, my chest tightened, waiting to hear that same panic voice again. But it didn't come. Not that night. Still, I knew it wasn't over. Calls don't just repeat like that. Not with the same words, the same breaths, the same cough. It was like I'd answered a recording, but a recording of something happening right now. And somewhere, 42 Maple Drive sat dark and empty, with a phone that shouldn't ring that I've been a dispatcher for 6 years now. And in that time, I've had all sorts of weird calls. Drunk people reporting ghosts in their basements. Kids prank calling about fake fires. Even a guy who swore his neighbor had been replaced by an imposter who wore the same clothes. But that night, that was something different. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a mistake. It was something I still don't understand. It started at 2:31 a.m. I remember because I'd just refilled my coffee and my shift was dragging. Night shifts are like that. Slow, quiet, almost peaceful if you forget for a second that the only reason people call is because something bad is happening. The call came in with that sharp tone in my headset. My fingers automatically hit the key to answer. 911. What's your emergency? The voice on the other end was shaky, breathless. Yeah, there's a fire. I think it's in my neighbor's house. I can see smoke. I typed as he spoke. Location, nature of the emergency, caller details. His name was David Carpenter. He gave me an address out on the north side, County Route 18, a stretch of mostly old houses and some empty lots. All right, sir, is anyone inside the house? I asked. I don't know. Lights are off. I think they're asleep. I went through the checklist. Flames visible? He said no, just smoke coming from the roof. Any smell of gas? He hesitated, said maybe, but he couldn't be sure. I assured him units were on the way, told him to stay clear and keep a safe distance. Fire crews got dispatched, and that was that. Just another call. 15 minutes later, the same tone rang in my headset. Another call. Same number. I frowned, thinking maybe he had an update. I answered. 911. What's your emergency? The same shaky breath. The same voice. Yeah, there's a fire. I think it's in my neighbor's house. I can see smoke. For a moment, I thought my headset had glitched and replayed the first call. But my console was live. This was a fresh call. I glanced at the clock. 2:46 a.m. Sir, did you just call us? I asked. What? No, I just noticed it. He sounded confused, like I'd interrupted him. I pulled up the previous call log on my screen. Same number, same name, same address. Every word he said was the same. The pauses, The way his voice shook on, I think it's in my neighbor's house. Exactly the same as before. It didn't feel like déjà vu, it was déjà vu. All right, sir, I said slowly. We already have crews. And then I stopped. Because when I checked the fire unit's status, they hadn't even arrived yet. They were still en route. And according to their last update, there was no smoke. No sign of fire. I looked at the caller ID again, half expecting it to be wrong. But it wasn't. It was him, David Carpenter. Something about his breathing got to me. It wasn't just panicked, it was rehearsed. Like he knew exactly when to inhale, exactly when to hesitate. Like this conversation had been recorded somewhere, and someone was playing it back to me in real time. I went off script. David, what color is the smoke? There was a pause, longer than it should have been. Then he said, gray, maybe a little black. Same answer as before, word for word. My hand felt cold on the console. David, I want you to look at the house again. Is the smoke still coming from the roof? Another pause. Then, exactly like before. Yeah, from the roof. I had this sudden image, him standing there, phone to his ear, not even looking at the house, just repeating what he'd said before. Or maybe not even him. Something else. When I tried to ask a different question, the line cut. Not a click. Not static. Just gone. I sat there staring at my console, the green call active, light now dark. Fire crews arrived at the address at 2:54 a.m. They reported no smoke, no flames, nothing unusual. The house was dark and empty. Neighbors said the family was on vacation. I logged the call as duplicate. That's the polite way to say we don't know what the hell happened. But here's the part that kept me from sleeping later. The recording. Every call gets recorded automatically. I pulled up the first call and listened to it in my headset. Then I played the second one. They were identical. Not just the words, identical. The same tiny cough in the background at 0:13. The same sharp inhale before, I think it's in my neighbor's house. The same faint hum behind his voice, like the sound of a refrigerator in the distance. If I played them side by side, they lined up perfectly. I know because I did. I sat there in the dim light of the dispatch room, hearing the same man say the same thing in the exact same tone, twice, 15 minutes apart. And each time, the fire that didn't exist was just starting. I didn't tell my supervisor right away. Part of me didn't want to sound paranoid. And part of me didn't want to know what he'd say. By the time my shift ended at 6 a.m., the calls were still on my mind. The address, the voice, the fact that both were perfectly the same. That kind of thing doesn't happen. Even if a guy was reading from a script, there'd be little differences, breathing, timing, background noise. This wasn't like that. This was something else. I went home, lay in bed, and listened to the recordings again on my phone. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to catch something I'd missed. Some clue in the background. And that's when I noticed it. In the second call, just after he says, I can see smoke, there's a sound. It's faint, like a whisper but drawn out. I replayed it 20 times, slowing it down, boosting the volume. It wasn't a word. It wasn't even in English. It was like air escaping through teeth. Like someone breathing into the microphone who wasn't the caller. That sound wasn't in the first recording. I told myself it was interference. Static. Anything but what it sounded like. Someone else there, close to him. When my next shift started the following night, I avoided looking at the call logs for a while. I didn't want to see his name again. But at 2:31 a.m., I caught myself glancing at the clock. Waiting. And the worst part? I knew, deep down, I was going to hear it again, that I don't know the exact moment I realized it. Maybe it was the third call. Or the fourth. But something shifted. We'd been sitting in the dispatch center for what felt like an hour since the repeat call started. First a fire call. Then the exact same fire call again. Word for word. Then again. And again. Each time, the voice on the other end never changed. Same panic. Same inflection. Same pauses. It was like a recording, except I could hear tiny, living breaths between the words. I could hear a throat straining. I could hear the wet panic in their mouth. It was real. It had to be real. But the strangest part wasn't the calls. Not at first. It was the clock. There's an old wall clock above the central desk, the kind with yellowing plastic and a faint hum when the second hand moves. I've stared at that clock a million times during night shifts, counting down the hours until morning. At some point, I looked up and it read 3:07. No big deal. Except, I kept looking back at it. 3:07. Still, no second hand moving. It should have been ticking. I could hear the electricity buzzing in the room. I could hear Lisa at the next station typing into the system. I could hear my own chair creak when I shifted. But the clock was dead silent. I thought maybe it was broken, or the battery was out. But we've got 3 more wall clocks in the room, and every single one of them, 3:07. Even the one by the break room that hasn't been changed for daylight savings since 2019, it matched perfectly. I didn't say anything right away. I just kept glancing. My stomach had that low, heavy drop you get when you know something's off, but your brain isn't ready to name it yet. The phone rang again. Same number. Same call. The moment I answered, my skin went cold. Hello? You have to help me. My kitchen's on fire. Every word hit exactly where it had before. I found myself mouthing along with it, like I'd memorized a song. And at the exact point in the sentence where she took a sharp, gasping inhale, I did too, because I knew it was coming. I didn't even respond this time. I just let her speak until the line went dead. Lisa was staring at me when I hung up. That was the same call, she said. Her voice was flat, like it wasn't even a question anymore. I know. Timestamp it, she told me. I glanced at my screen and froze. The system said the call came in at 3:07. Exactly. I flicked to the log for the last call. 3:07. The one before that? 3:07. It wasn't possible. The calls had been spaced apart. I'd been sitting here between them. Time had passed, but the logs didn't think so. I checked the little digital clock on my computer monitor. 3:07. I checked my watch. 3:07. Lisa, I whispered. Something's wrong. Before she could respond, the phone rang again. 3:07. We tried to tell ourselves it was the system glitching. Maybe the time server was down. Maybe some internal loop had frozen the call log. But if that were true, why was my watch frozen too? Lisa took hers off and smacked it on the desk, but the hands didn't even twitch. Maybe she started, but then her phone rang. Her personal phone. She picked it up, and I heard it from across the desk. The same voice. The same fire. Lisa slammed her cell down like it burned her. Her hands were shaking. We stopped answering for a while. Just let the phones ring. But they wouldn't stop. It's different when you're trained to respond to emergencies. Letting a call go unanswered feels like letting someone die. Your brain rebels. Your chest tightens. You have to fight the urge to pick up. At some point, I couldn't take it anymore and grabbed the receiver again. It was her. Again. And for the first time, I interrupted her. What's your name? I asked. Silence. Then, you have to help me. My kitchen's on fire. I slammed the phone down so hard it rattled the desk. 3:07. We decided to check outside. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the sun had started to rise. Maybe the building's clocks were wrong, but the world was still moving. But when we opened the front door, the parking lot lights looked frozen in place. Not flickering, not swaying in the breeze. Just locked. Even the little moths that usually spun around them, they were hanging midair. Lisa stepped forward and touched one. It crumbled between her fingers, like it had been dead for years. We didn't talk about it. We just went back inside. The calls started sounding different. Not in the words. Those were still the same. But the voice, she was starting to sound tired. Slower. On maybe the 10th call. I'm guessing here, since time was meaningless now, I heard her whisper something after the line should have gone dead. A breath. A pause. Then, are you still there? I didn't answer. My throat felt dry. The line clicked off. At some point, I realized my stomach wasn't growling. My coffee hadn't cooled. The steam just hung above the cup, unmoving. I couldn't tell if we'd been here for hours or seconds. My body didn't ache from sitting too long. My eyes didn't burn from staring at the screen. It was like my body wasn't registering time at all, but my mind was, and it was starting to fray. Lisa started writing things down in a notebook, just to prove we were still doing something. She'd jot a word or a mark every time a call came in. Pages filled up, but the clock, still 3:07. I asked her once, what if this is it? What if we're stuck here forever? She didn't answer. She just kept writing. The phones weren't the only thing repeating. A pen rolled off my desk. I picked it up. 10 minutes later, if you can even call it that, it rolled again. Same angle, same spot. The AC unit clicked on, the same hum, the same faint rattle, always ending after the same number of breaths. At one point, I sneezed. And later, I sneezed again, exactly the same way. Like my body was running on a loop. I thought about the caller. If we were stuck, was she stuck too? Was she calling over and over from the same frozen minute? Or was she outside of this somehow, watching us? The next time I answered, I tried to scream into the phone. I yelled for her to stop, but my voice sounded muffled in my own ears, like shouting underwater. She didn't react. She just said her line again. At some point, the voice changed slightly. Not in pitch, but in distance. She sounded further away, like she was standing at the far end of a hallway, calling to me. Then, the last time I answered, if you can call it the last, she didn't speak at all. I could hear her breathing. Slow, deep. Then she whispered, "You're almost out." The line went dead. Out of what? When I looked up, the clocks were moving again. 3:08. Just like that, time had ticked forward 1 minute. Lisa was staring at her watch, her eyes wide. "Did you?" Before she could finish, the phone rang. But it wasn't the fire call this time. It was a different voice. A man's voice. And he said, "We've been waiting for you." The line went dead. 3:09. I don't know if I was relieved or more afraid than I'd ever been. Because if time could freeze like that once, it could happen again. And maybe next time, it won't start back up that I don't remember how long I'd been sitting there. The headset felt like it had grown into my skin, the padded earpiece pressing deeper into the side of my head with every repeated call. My voice was starting to sound alien to me. Flat, hollow, like it was coming from somewhere else in the room. The calls never stopped. I knew every word by now. The moment I picked up, there'd be that same ragged breathing. The same man's voice, trembling, telling me, "There's fire, someone's inside." And no matter what I said, no matter how fast I tried to get it out, the moment I asked for his location, he'd give it. The same street, the same house. We'd already sent trucks there, over and over. Each time, the units would check in, their voices tense, telling me the place was empty. Cold. No fire. No people. And then the call would come again. At first, I thought maybe the system was glitching. Some old call caught in a loop. But the timestamps weren't making sense. They all said 3:07 a.m. The first one, the 15th one, the 50th, all of them. I'd glance up at the wall clock above the main monitors, the big one with the faint yellow face and slow second hand, and it would say the same thing. 3:07. I remember the first time I noticed it. It was maybe 20 calls in. My brain was fried, my coffee had gone cold, and my wrists ached from typing the same information again and again. Something in the corner of my eye had been bugging me for a while. When I looked up, I saw it. The second hand wasn't moving. It sat frozen between the 4 and the 5, not even twitching. I thought maybe the battery had died. But then I looked at my computer's clock. 3:07. The same time. No blinking colon to mark the seconds passing. Just stillness. I glanced at the phone logs. Every call, 3:07. It was like the world had stopped moving without telling me. At first, I laughed. That nervous, ugly laugh that comes when you're too tired to deal with something weird. I even told Emma, one of the dispatchers across from me. She swiveled her chair, rubbed her eyes, and said, "It's been 3:07 for an hour now." She said it like she was telling me it was raining outside, like it was just a fact she'd accepted. "You didn't think that was strange?" I asked. She shrugged. "Nothing's been strange since this started. It's all the same call." Her voice cracked at the end. I could tell she'd been answering them too. We all had. After that, I started noticing other things. The fluorescent light above my desk, the one that always flickered, had been stuck mid-flicker for God knows how long. The shadows it cast on my desk never shifted. The air in the room felt heavier. Not hot, not cold, just thick, like it had weight to it. No one came in or left. No change of shift. No radio chatter from units outside, unless it was to tell me the fire wasn't there. And still, the phone would ring. Sharp, piercing, like it was trying to cut through my skull. I don't know when I stopped logging the calls. It didn't matter. The notes were the same. Sometimes I'd test it. I'd let it ring. I let it go for 10 rings, 20, until Emma would look at me and whisper, "Just answer it." And when I finally did, the voice would be waiting for me. Like it knew. I thought maybe if I stayed silent, it wouldn't happen. But the man would still speak. Sometimes, even before I said hello. And once, I swear, I heard him say, "Why aren't you helping me this time?" I kept telling myself I'd just get up, walk outside, get in my car, go home. But when I stood up, the room tilted. My vision went gray at the edges, like I'd been holding my breath too long. And the moment I'd take a step toward the door, the phone would ring. It was like the sound hooked into my spine and yanked me back into my chair. Every single time. I don't know how much time passed. Hours? Days? Time didn't mean anything anymore. There was only before 3:07 and after. Except there was no after. The strangest thing was, I started recognizing things in the background of the calls. At first, it was just the man's voice and the sound of his labored breathing. But then, after maybe the 100th call, I heard it. A faint clicking sound. Steady, like the ticking of a clock. Except it was slower. 3 clicks. Pause. 3 clicks. Pause. I thought maybe it was the fire crackling. But there was no fire. Then, once, I thought I heard someone whispering under the man's voice. Too faint to make out, but I could swear it was my name. One time, I asked him, "Who's there with you?" Silence. Just the breathing. And then, in my own voice, he said, "You are." After that, I stopped asking questions. I tried everything to break it. I pulled the headset off. I unplugged my console. I even smashed my coffee mug against the phone. None of it mattered. The phone kept ringing. The calls kept coming. And every time I picked up, it was 3:07 a.m. The others started fading too. Emma stopped looking at me when she spoke. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused. She'd answer a call, repeat the same words she'd said hundreds of times, and then just sit there. I don't think she was hearing me anymore. Or maybe she was hearing someone else. At some point, I realized I couldn't remember what my life was before this. I couldn't picture my apartment. I couldn't picture my bed. There was just the desk, the headset, the clock, and the ringing. It was only when I stopped answering altogether that something finally changed. I let it ring, and ring, and ring. It didn't stop. It grew louder. The sound filled the room, pressing into my skull until my vision blurred. And then, silence. For the first time since it began. I sat there, staring at the dead phone, afraid to move. The air felt colder. The light above me flickered for the first time in forever. I looked up at the clock. The second hand twitched. It moved. And then, the phone rang. This time, I answered without thinking. But there was no man, no breathing, just my own voice. Calm, steady, saying it's not over. And then the line went dead. I looked up at the clock again. 3:07 a.m. I think it's still that time now. No matter what I do, no matter how many calls I take, the night won't end. The calls won't stop. And I think the next voice I hear won't be his. It'll be mine, telling someone else to answer. I'd been working night shifts at the dispatch center for about 3 months when I found the box. I wasn't even supposed to be in storage that night. The old supply closet was in the back hallway, past the vending machine that always made that low, humming rattle. It smelled like stale paper and dust back there. I remember I was looking for an extra headset because mine had a loose wire that kept cutting out during calls. It was quiet. That strange kind of quiet you only get at 2 or 3 in the morning, where every sound feels heavier. The light in the storage room was one of those single pull-chain bulbs, yellow and weak, casting shadows into every corner. There were shelves stacked with boxes of printer paper, old uniforms, random equipment. Most of it looked like no one had touched it in years. That's when I noticed it. The box was on the floor, tucked between 2 filing cabinets that didn't even match the rest of the furniture in the building. It wasn't labeled. Not headsets, not archive, nothing. Just a plain cardboard box, taped once across the middle, with a layer of dust thick enough that I could draw my finger through it. And inside were tapes. Not digital drives. Not CDs, cassette tapes. Dozens of them. They were all unmarked except for one detail, a date. handwritten in faded pen along the spine of each plastic case. The dates didn't make sense. Some were from before I was even born, late 80s, early 90s. Others were more recent, but still at least a decade old. And all of them had a small red sticker in the corner. No other markings. I shouldn't have cared. But the thing is that dispatch, every single 911 call is supposed to be logged, recorded, and stored in the digital database. There's a strict chain for evidence and record keeping. Cassette tapes? That's not just old. That's wrong. I told myself I was just curious, but looking back, I think there was something else pulling at me. That same strange draw people get when they know they're about to see something they shouldn't. I grabbed one of the tapes at random. The date read June 14th, 1998. I turned it over in my hands. The plastic was cold, heavier than I expected. I could hear the faint rattle of the spools inside. There was no cassette player in the storage room, but I knew there was one in the training office. The old kind they used for call review before everything went digital. I remember glancing over my shoulder before I left the closet. Like, I didn't want anyone to see me with it. Which was ridiculous. It was just a tape. The training office was dark except for the glow from the parking lot lights bleeding through the blinds. The cassette player sat on the corner desk, a bulky black thing with silver buttons dulled from years of use. I dusted it off, slid the tape in, and pressed play. At first, all I heard was static. Then a voice. It was a man. His tone was shaky, like he'd been running, his breath uneven. Hello? Hello? I need please. There was a pause. A sound in the background, muffled, wet, like someone dragging something heavy over a floor. The dispatcher's voice came next. A woman, calm and steady. 911. What's your emergency? The man didn't answer right away. I could hear something else on the line. Not just a dragging sound. A faint whisper. Too soft to make out words. When he finally spoke, his voice broke. It's in the house. The dispatcher started asking him for his address, but he kept talking over her. I locked the door. I swear I locked it. It's not supposed to be here. The static swelled, like the tape was straining to hold the sound. I leaned closer. My skin prickled. The man started crying. But it wasn't just fear. It sounded like regret. Like he'd done something terrible and knew it was too late to fix it. I thought it would stop after last time, he whispered. The dispatcher repeated her question, address, name, anyone else in the house. He didn't answer any of it. Instead, he said something that made my stomach knot. It knows you're listening. The tape cut off right after. Just dead air. I sat there, staring at the player, my hand hovering over the stop button like maybe I could rewind and hear something different. I should have put the tape back in the box and left it alone. But my hands were already reaching for another one. The second tape was dated March 2nd, 1991. This one started in the middle of a call. The dispatcher's voice was mid-sentence. We've sent units. Stay where you are. A woman answered, whispering so softly, I had to turn up the volume. It's under the bed. It's been under there all night. The dispatcher asked if she meant a person, an intruder. The woman didn't respond. Instead, she said something like, it's breathing different now. There was a long silence. I could hear faint shuffling in the background, like sheets moving. And then something else. A sound that wasn't human. Not a growl. Not a hiss. Just wrong. A shape of sound that made my brain want to reject it. Then the tape stopped. No goodbye. No resolution. I was so focused on the sound that I didn't hear someone behind me until a voice broke the silence. What are you doing with those? I jumped so hard, I nearly knocked the player off the desk. It was Marlene, one of the senior dispatchers. She was in her late 50s, had been working here longer than I'd been alive. Her hair was pulled back tight, her eyes sharper than I'd ever seen them. I stammered something about just finding them in storage. Her face changed in a way I can't describe. Not angry, not surprised. More like she'd been expecting this moment. You shouldn't be listening to those, she said. Her voice was flat, but there was something under it. Fear. I tried to ask why, but she just shook her head. Put them back. All of them. And don't take them out again. She didn't wait for me to answer. Just walked out, leaving the door half open. I sat there for a long time, the weight of her reaction pressing on me. I should have listened. But that night, after my shift, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd heard. The man saying it knows you're listening. The woman whispering about the breathing. The way both calls ended without warning. And the worst part? When I went back to the storage room the next night, the box wasn't there. The floor between the filing cabinets was empty. No dust pattern. No sign anything had ever been there at all. I didn't open the box again for 2 days. It sat on the floor of my apartment, next to the couch, like some kind of stray animal I wasn't ready to touch. I told myself it was because I didn't have a cassette player at home. That was a lie. I'd seen one at the thrift store down the street for $8. I could have gone and grabbed it any time. The truth was, I was scared. Not scared in the way you're scared when a drunk guy stumbles toward you in the dark, or when you almost crash your car. Those are quick bursts. This was the kind of fear that hangs in the back of your throat, that makes you keep glancing at something even when you're trying not to. Every time I passed the living room, my eyes went straight to the box. And every time, I'd tell myself I should just throw it out. But I didn't. On the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I bought the cassette player. It was one of those chunky black ones with big square buttons, the kind that clicks when you press play. I sat on my coffee table, plugged it in, and sat on the floor with the box open in front of me. The smell was stronger now. Dust, old paper, and something faintly sour. Like rainwater that had been trapped somewhere for years. The cassettes were all the same. Clear plastic, cheap labels, each with a date written in fading marker. No names, no case numbers. I picked one at random. June 14th, 1998. The tape hissed when I slid it in. For a moment there was nothing, just that low, steady static like wind in a microphone. Then I heard it, the faint, tinny ring of a phone being picked up. A man's voice answered. Not mine, obviously. Deep, calm, professional. 911. What's your emergency? There was a pause, and then a woman's voice. She sounded young, shaky. There's someone in my house. I froze. The dispatcher asked her the standard questions. Was she alone? Did she know who it was? Could she see them? She kept saying no, over and over. Then she whispered, I can hear them breathing. The dispatcher told her to stay on the line, that officers were on the way. But she didn't respond. The only sound was her breathing and something else, faint, low, almost blending into the static. It took me a second to realize it wasn't the phone line making that noise. It was a voice, a man's voice, so quiet I could barely make out the words. He was repeating what she said, not mocking, not even changing his tone, just echoing. She'd whisper, I'm in the bedroom. And a second later, he'd whisper too, I'm in the bedroom. Her breathing got faster. She kept asking, who is this? What do you want? But the other voice never answered. It just kept copying her. Then, suddenly, there was silence. No breathing, no voice, just dead air. And then, static, loud, harsh, filling the whole room. I yanked the tape out, my hands shaking. I told myself it was just a prank call. Maybe some creep messing with her. But the way the voice sounded, it didn't feel human. I put the tape back in the box. And then I grabbed another one. October 3rd, 2001. This one started mid-call, like someone had hit record late. A man was shouting, panicked. It's not my wife. It's not my wife. The dispatcher tried to calm him down, asking where he was. He said he was in his living room, that his wife was in the kitchen, except it wasn't her. She looks like her, he said, but she's not moving right. Her face is wrong. He started crying, gasping, his words tumbling out too fast to catch. I could hear something in the background, slow, deliberate footsteps. The dispatcher kept asking if he was in danger. The man whispered, she's smiling now. There was a sound, not a scream exactly, more like someone's breath catching, and then the line went silent. Static again. I didn't even eject the tape this time. I just sat there, staring at the cassette player, my pulse pounding in my neck. The pattern was already clear. These calls didn't have endings. No resolutions. Just fear, silence, and static. I don't know how long I sat there before I reached for a third one. March 22nd, 1995. This call was different from the first second. No ringing, no greeting. Just a voice. A child's voice. You can hear me, right? They sounded no older than 8 or 9. The line crackled, faint, like it was being stretched across miles. I'm not supposed to be on the phone, the kid whispered. They'll hear me. The dispatcher didn't speak. Or maybe there was no dispatcher this time. It was just the kid. They're upstairs right now, the child said. I can hear them moving. They're looking for me. A pause. Oh, they found me. There was a click, and then the static roared to life. I stopped. My skin felt tight, like it was pulling against my bones. I put the tape down, closed the box, and shoved it back against the wall. But that didn't help. Even with the tapes out of sight, I couldn't shake the feeling that the voices were still here. That if I pressed my ear to the walls, I'd hear them whispering through the plaster. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch, staring at the box in the dark. The air felt heavy, like the moments before a thunderstorm. I kept thinking about something I'd read once, that old recordings sometimes capture things people don't notice in the moment. Background noises, breathing, even voices that weren't supposed to be there. These tapes weren't just calls. They were something else. And they'd been sitting in that storage room for years. I started wondering why. If they were just old calls, why weren't they logged? Why weren't they destroyed? Someone had boxed them up and shoved them into a corner, like they didn't want anyone to find them. And now I had. Around 4 a.m., I made myself a promise. I'd take the tapes back in the morning, put them right where I found them. But when the sun came up, I didn't. Instead, I played another one. It was dated April 17th, 2004. The voice on the other end was quiet, almost gentle. There's a man outside my window, she said. He's been there for hours. The dispatcher asked if she'd called the police yet. She said yes, twice, but no one came. They don't see him, she whispered. When they drive by, they just wave. The dispatcher told her to lock her doors and stay inside. It doesn't matter, she said. He's already inside. A sound came through the tape then, slow, careful footsteps, moving closer. Do you hear that? She asked. Then, silence. The tape clicked off. By the time I stopped, the sun was high in the sky, and I'd gone through 9 tapes. 9 different voices. 9 different nightmares. And every single one ended the same way, silence and static. No answers. No follow-ups. No proof that anyone had even tried to help. It was like the callers had just disappeared. I couldn't eat that day. My hand shook when I poured myself a glass of water. Every sound in my apartment felt too loud, too close. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the pipes, the faint murmur of people talking in the hallway. By midnight, I'd convinced myself of 2 things. 1, these calls weren't normal. And 2, I couldn't stop listening. I know this is going to sound strange, but the tapes started to feel alive. Not literally. Not like they were moving or breathing. But there was this pull. Like if I stopped, I'd miss something important. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Faint noises under the static, little gaps where the silence didn't feel empty. In one tape, I swear I heard someone say my name. Not loud, not clear, but enough to make me sit up straight. In another, I heard what sounded like footsteps in the same room as the caller, and then in the same room as the dispatcher. I kept telling myself it was my imagination, that I'd been listening too long. But deep down, I knew that wasn't it. These weren't just recordings. They were warnings. And whatever they were warning me about, it wasn't over that I didn't take the tapes home. I swore to myself I wouldn't. After the second night of listening to them in the storage room, I shoved them back into the cardboard box, slid it onto the top shelf, and told myself they'd stay there until I figured out what to do. But the voices, they didn't stay there. At first, I thought it was just the usual bleed over from work. When you spend your shifts listening to people at their worst, car wrecks, break-ins, domestic fights, you take it home with you. Sometimes you hear a scream in your head when you're brushing your teeth. Sometimes you swear you hear your own phone ringing when it's not. I told myself that's what this was. Just my brain replaying things. But then it started to happen when I was on shift. I was halfway through a quiet Tuesday evening. 2 noise complaints, 1 drunk driver report, where the first one came through. It wasn't through my headset. It was behind me. A woman's voice. Soft. Shaky. I think he's inside. I spun around in my chair, so fast the wheels screeched on the tile. The room was empty except for Ramirez, who sat 2 desks over with his headset on, typing something. I could still hear it, though. Her breathing. Right behind me. And I knew that breathing. It was from one of the tapes. The one where the woman was whispering from her closet. I'd memorized it without wanting to. Every uneven inhale, every quiver in her voice. But here's the thing. On the tape, she stopped talking after the first 30 seconds. Just breathing until the static cut in. This kept going. She whispered again. He's in the hallway now. My stomach flipped. I grabbed my headset, thinking maybe I'd accidentally tuned into a live call. But my call board was empty. The line was dead. And then it stopped. Just like that. I didn't tell Ramirez. What was I supposed to say? Hey, I think I'm hearing dead calls over my shoulder. So I shook it off. Or I tried to. But the next night, it happened again. This time it was a man's voice. Slurred, panicked. Please don't let me die here. It was one of the last tapes I'd listened to before I locked the box away. I'd almost turned that one off because the way he said it, like he already knew it was too late, had sat in my stomach for hours afterward. I froze with my hands over the keyboard, waiting for the static. It didn't come. Instead, there was this scraping, like someone was dragging something heavy across the floor. Ramirez wasn't on shift that night. It was just me and the overnight guy, Joe, who was too far away to hear my lines unless I shouted. The scraping got louder, closer. I yanked my headset off and slammed it onto the desk. The sound didn't stop. It was in the room, and then it was gone. I checked every corner of that dispatch floor, even the supply closet. Nothing. When I sat back down, my headset light was blinking. Incoming call. I answered, my throat dry. 911. What's your emergency? Nothing. Just static. And beneath it, breathing. It was the same breathing from the closet tape. Same slow, shaky pulls of air. I almost hung up. My finger hovered over the disconnect button. Then, through the hiss, I heard it. You can hear us now. I dropped the call. The more I tried to ignore it, the worse it got. It wasn't just at work anymore. I'd be making coffee in my apartment and hear the man from the Please Don't Let Me Die Here tape muttering in my kitchen. His words would blend with the hiss of my kettle. Or I'd be in the shower, and over the water I'd hear the closet woman whispering numbers. Counting down. The scariest part wasn't that they were following me. It was that they were changing. On the tapes, they were trapped in their moments, repeating the same phrases, stuck on a loop. Now, they were saying things I'd never heard before. They knew I was listening. One night, I woke up to my phone ringing. Not my cell, my landline, which almost no one has the number for. When I picked it up, there was no greeting. No one asking for help. Just, Box 19, find a rest. And then static. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I went back to the storage room the next day, telling myself I just needed to see the tapes again, just to prove to myself they were still where I left them. But when I opened the box, it wasn't the same. The top layer was there, same handwritten labels, same dust, but underneath were more tapes. 6 of them. No labels. Just black plastic. I hadn't put them there, and no one else had access to that storage but me and 2 supervisors, one of whom was on leave. I just stood there staring at them for a long time, feeling that thick, heavy stillness you get before a storm. Finally, I took one. I don't know why. Curiosity. Stupidity. Some feeling like, if I didn't listen, it would find another way to reach me. I waited until the end of my shift, then stayed late. I put the tape into the old player in the break room. It started with static. Then, faint music. A radio, maybe. Something old. And then my voice. Not from a call I'd ever taken. Not from anything I remembered. Just me, saying, "Hello, can you hear me? I think I'm stuck here." My hands went cold. I hit stop so hard the player clunked. But I swear, the static kept going. Not from the machine. From the room. After that, the voices didn't even try to hide. They bled into real calls. A woman called about a suspicious man in her yard, but halfway through, her voice deepened into the man from the Don't Let Me Die Here tape, screaming my name. Another call was nothing but a little girl crying. But under her sobs, I could hear the closet woman counting down again. 5, 4, 3. Once, in the middle of a call about a car accident, I heard myself, my voice, same tone, same pitch, say, "You're not supposed to be here yet." The caller didn't react, like they couldn't hear it. But I could, clear as day. I started keeping the radio on in my apartment at night. It made me feel like I could blend their voices into the noise. but it didn't work. One night, I woke up and the radio was off. I don't remember turning it off. The silence was thick. And then, Box 19, a voice said from the corner of my room. The man from the tapes. Closer than ever. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. He said it again. Find a rest. Then the static rose, filling my head, until it wasn't sound anymore. It was pressure, like someone pushing against the inside of my skull. I must have blacked out because the next thing I knew, it was morning. I tried to tell my supervisor. I didn't mention the voices, just said the tapes were strange. Maybe they needed to be checked. He gave me this tired look and said, "Those are archived cases. Old tech. Ignore them." And that was it. Except I can't ignore them. Because last night, I was driving home, passing the empty field by Miller Road, when I saw something in my headlights. A payphone. Out there, in the middle of nothing. No wires. No booth. Just a phone, standing in the dirt like it had been waiting for me. And it was ringing. I didn't stop. I couldn't. But I knew if I had, the voice on the other end would have known exactly what to say to make me listen. And I think, next time, I might that I didn't plan to take the last tape home. In fact, I told myself I wouldn't. After everything that happened with the others, I should have left the box locked away in the archive room. Should have filed a report. Should have walked away. But by then, my brain was hooked, like some part of me needed to know how it ended. The tapes had stopped making sense. At first, they were just calls. Strange, yes. Wrong, yes. But still calls. People in trouble. Voices I didn't know. And then, without me noticing when, they started following me. It wasn't just in the dispatch room anymore. I'd hear them in the hall, in the bathroom, in my car on the way home. I remember stopping at a red light and hearing that same woman's whisper, just behind my right ear, "Don't hang up." I nearly ran the light just to get away from it. But there was nowhere to get away to. By the time I found the final tape buried at the bottom of the box, I wasn't even scared anymore. I was tired. I think I wanted to hear it because maybe, just maybe, it would make the others stop. It didn't. I waited until it was after midnight. I don't know why. Maybe because everything in me knew I shouldn't be doing this, and nighttime felt private, like fewer eyes would be on me. I sat at my kitchen table, the recorder in front of me. Lights off, except for the one above the stove, which buzzed faintly like it was thinking about dying. The tape was unlabeled, just black plastic with that faint smell of dust and something else, something metallic like dry blood. I slid it in, pressed play. At first, all I heard was the hiss of the tape. Then breathing, slow, deep, a man's breathing, and then my voice. Not someone who sounded like me. Not close. It was my voice. My exact tone, my exact rhythm. It said, "If you're listening to this, they've already found you." I froze. The tape clicked quietly in its reels. My hands went cold. "Don't answer the phone," it continued. "No matter what you hear. Even if it's someone you love. Even if it's someone you know is dead. Don't answer. And whatever you do, don't look behind you." I couldn't breathe. I didn't know what I expected, but it wasn't me talking to me. I tried to tell myself it was some kind of trick. Maybe one of the other dispatchers was screwing with me. Maybe they'd found recordings of my training calls and edited them. But the words, those exact words, had never left my mouth. And then the tape went quiet. No breathing, no static. Just silence. I was about to rewind when I heard the sound of a phone ringing. On the tape. It wasn't my ringtone or the dispatch line. It was that old, mechanical kind of ring. The one you'd hear from landlines in the 80s. It rang once, twice, 3 times, and then the click of it being picked up. My voice again. "Hello." But it was different this time. My voice sounded wrong. Hollow, like it was speaking from inside a room that swallowed the sound. There was another voice on the line now. A woman. Not the whispering woman I'd heard before. This one sounded normal. Kind, almost. She said, "We're so glad you answered. We've been waiting." And then the scream. Not hers. Mine. It was my scream, raw and violent, like something was ripping it out of me. I felt my own throat tighten just hearing it. And then, nothing. Just the hiss. I hit stop and yanked the tape out. My hand was shaking so badly, I almost dropped it. And then my phone rang. Not the landline. My cell phone. I stared at the screen. No number. Just unknown caller. It rang 3 times before going to voicemail. I didn't move, didn't breathe. A moment later, my voicemail notification popped up. I didn't want to check it. Every part of me told me not to. But I did. It was 5 seconds long. Just breathing. My breathing. The next night, I left the tape recorder in my car. I thought maybe distance would help. I didn't touch the tapes, didn't even look at them. But the calls didn't stop. I'd be lying in bed, and the phone would ring. Sometimes my cell, sometimes the landline, sometimes, God help me, both at the same time. And it was always the same. If I picked up, there'd be silence at first, and then breathing, and then my own voice saying something I didn't remember saying. Sometimes it was warnings. Sometimes it was things I knew weren't true. Like, you've already been in this house before. Or, it's under your bed right now. Once, I swear to you it said, I'm not you anymore. I stopped going to work for a few days. I told my supervisor I had the flu, but I still couldn't sleep. Every time I started to drift off, the phone would ring. One night it didn't. The silence was worse. Because after hours of nothing, I heard the breathing again, but not through a phone. It was in the room with me. I sat up slowly, the dark pressing in on all sides. The breathing was low and steady, like someone was standing just a few feet away. I didn't move. I didn't look. Then, from the dark, my own voice whispered, "We told you not to listen." Something cold touched my hand. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember was sunlight hitting my face through the blinds. I was sitting at the kitchen table. The tape recorder was in front of me. The final tape already loaded. I don't remember putting it there. I don't remember rewinding it. I pressed play. This time, there was no hiss. No breathing. Just my voice. Calm. We're almost done now. We just need one more recording. I asked out loud what that meant. The voice on the tape laughed. Just once. You'll know when it starts, it said. And then, through the tape, I heard the sound of my phone ringing. Except this time, my phone actually started ringing too. It was in perfect sync. I didn't want to answer. I swear to you, I didn't. But I couldn't stop myself. I picked up. The voice on the other end said, "We're recording now." And then I heard myself scream. The rest is hard to explain. I woke up at the dispatch center, in my chair, the headset on my head. The screens were on. Calls were coming in. But the voices weren't strangers anymore. They were all me. Every single one. Different tones, different moods, but always my voice. They asked me questions I didn't understand. They told me things I didn't want to know. They laughed when I asked for help. And somewhere, in between the calls, I realized something. I wasn't answering the phones anymore. I was on the phones. I don't think I've left since. Or maybe I never came back. The box is gone now. The tapes too. But if your phone rings and it sounds just a little too familiar, don't answer. Because maybe it's me. And maybe I'm just looking for someone to take my place. It was one of those nights where the air in the dispatch room felt heavier than it should. You wouldn't notice it if you were just walking through. But if you sat there long enough, like I had, you'd feel it. This weight pressing down on your chest, making it hard to breathe the way you're supposed to. The phones have been slow all evening. A couple of traffic stops. A woman yelling about her neighbor's dog. Nothing that stayed in my head longer than the time it took to type it out in the log. I was halfway through a cup of stale coffee when the next call came in. It didn't start with the usual rush. No panicked breathing, no screaming. Just silence. Then a voice. A small, shaky whisper. "Hello." I straightened in my chair. The voice was so soft, I almost thought the line was bad. But no, it was deliberate. Controlled in that strange, frightened way you hear from people trying not to be overheard. "This is 911, I said, my own voice lowering without even thinking about it. "What's your emergency?" There was a pause. I could hear faint movement, fabric rustling, maybe, and then the voice came again. "There's someone in my room." The words were so quiet I had to press the headset harder to my ear. It was a kid. A boy. Maybe 8 or 9. "Okay," I said slowly, keeping my tone calm. "What's your name?" "Evan." "All right, Evan. Are you somewhere safe right now?" Another pause. I could hear his breathing now. Quick, shaky. "I'm on my bed." My stomach tightened. "Is the person still there with you?" A beat of silence. Then, in the faintest whisper yet, "They're under it." I didn't say anything for a second. Not because I didn't believe him, but because I didn't want him to hear the way my own breath caught. Under your bed? Why, yeah. I started typing into the system, flagging it as an intruder in progress. The nearest unit was about 4 minutes out. I kept my voice steady. Evan, is your door locked? Uh-huh, but they got in anyway. How do you know they're under your bed? I heard them breathing. I felt a chill creep up my arms. Can you still hear it now? The line went quiet. Too quiet. Then I heard the faintest sound, like the receiver shifting slightly in his hand, followed by the most fragile whisper yet. They're whispering too. My fingers froze over the keyboard. What are they saying, Evan? They're saying my name. I swallowed hard, pushing my voice into that calm, practiced register. Okay, I need you to stay as quiet as you can. Police are on the way. Can you tell me your address? He gave it to me. I sent it through to the responding officers. Evan, are your parents home? A longer pause this time. They are in their room. Can you go to them? And no, they told me to stay here. That was strange. They told you tonight? Or before? He hesitated. Before. Something in his voice made me shift in my seat. How long before? Since last time. I tried to keep my mind from jumping ahead. Last time what, Evan? When he came back. The words were so simple, but the way he said them, it felt like they'd been rehearsed. Like he'd been saying them for a long time. Evan, I said gently, has someone been in your room before? Yes. He talked to me from under the bed. I didn't know what to say to that, so I went with procedure. Do you know this person? Silence. Evan, do you know them? Finally. No, but he sounds like me. I didn't like that answer. Not one bit. What do you mean he sounds like you? He whispers like me. The same way. Like he knows what I'm going to say. I kept my breathing even. Is he talking right now? Yes. What is he saying? He's telling me not to tell you. I glanced at the clock. Officers should have been there by now. I checked the GPS. They were pulling onto his street. Evan, the police are almost there. I need you to stay on the line, okay? Okay. I could hear him breathing again. Then something else. A second sound. It wasn't loud, just a faint, shallow breath. But it didn't match his. It was lower, slower, coming in right after his exhale, like it was waiting for him to breathe out so it could breathe in. And then, Evan. The whisper was so faint, I thought maybe he'd just repeated his own name to me. But no, his breath hitched right after, like he'd heard it too. That's him, Evans said. His voice trembled. He's getting closer. I tightened my grip on the headset. Evan, don't move. The police are there now. You should hear them knocking any second. But I didn't hear knocking. I heard a long, slow creak, the sound of weight shifting on old wooden boards. Evan, he's crawling out. I swear, for a moment, the temperature in the room dropped. I could hear the faint slide of fabric, like something was dragging itself over the sheets. Evan, listen to me. You need to get off the bed and go to your door. Now. I can't. Yes, you can. The police are there. He's smiling at me. My chest tightened. Evan, go. But he didn't. I heard his breathing speed up, and then something else. A voice. It wasn't the boy's. It was deeper, but still had that same quiet, careful rhythm. You told. I felt my skin crawl. The door in the background burst open. I heard shouting, boots on the floor, a man's voice yelling clear. Then the line cut. I sat there for a second, my hands shaking over the console. The system pinged. Officers on scene. I waited for the follow-up call. It came less than a minute later. It wasn't what I expected. The officer's voice was calm, too calm. Yeah, we checked the room. Kid's fine. Says he fell asleep watching TV. No intruder. I sat up straighter. What? I heard him. I heard someone else in there. Negative. Room's empty. Parents say he's got nightmares sometimes. That's all. I didn't argue. I just hung up and sat there. But that night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the sound in my head. That second breath, the one that waited for him to breathe out. And the way the other voice sounded just close enough to his dot, I kept telling myself it was just a normal call. Just a scared kid. That's all it was. But the thing is, the more I thought about it, the less I believed that. When I hung up with him that night, my headset felt heavier than usual. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. It wasn't because of what he said, it was how he said it. The tone in his voice. The slow way the words came out. Like each one had to be checked before it left his mouth. It was familiar. Too familiar. After my shift ended, I didn't go straight home. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at my steering wheel, trying to remember why my chest felt so tight. Then it hit me. I'd heard that voice before. Not the same kid, not the same pitch, but the same pattern. When I was 7 years old, I used to whisper the exact same way when I was afraid my dad might hear me. Back then, I thought if I made my words small enough, quiet enough, they wouldn't be real. I remember sitting in my room one night with the phone cord stretched under my bedroom door, whispering to my grandma's answering machine because she was the only person I thought might believe me. I told her there was someone in my room, that they were standing in the corner, watching. That was the night my dad kicked the door open, ripped the phone from my hand, and told me if I kept making things up, I wouldn't have a phone anymore. That whisper, it stayed with me. And now, here it was again, coming from some boy I'd never met, 30 miles away, 20 years later. The next evening, when I clocked in, I asked around casually. Hey, I said to Marla, one of the other dispatchers, you take any calls last night from a kid? Quiet voice, maybe 9 or 10. She shook her head without even looking up from her monitor. Nope. Why? I didn't answer. I didn't want to say it out loud. The calls come in at random. There's no guarantee I'd hear from him again. But a part of me wanted to. 2 nights later, it happened. The line opened with silence, just like before. I could hear him breathing. 911. What's your emergency? A pause. Then the whisper. It's me again. My throat went dry. Is this the same boy I talked to the other night? Yes. Short. Flat. What's your name? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Evan. Okay, Evan. Are you safe right now? Another pause. I could hear something faint in the background, like a low, steady hum. He's still under my bed. My stomach dropped. You mean the same person from before? Yes. Evan, can you leave the room? No. He'll follow me if I move. The hum in the background got louder, like it was pressing up against my earpiece. It wasn't electrical. It wasn't static. It sounded almost like someone breathing, deep and slow. I kept my voice steady. Evan, I want you to tell me what he looks like. He didn't answer at first. Then, he looks like me. Every hair on my arm stood up. Like you? You mean same clothes, same face? Yes, he whispered. But wrong. Wrong how? I could hear his lips trembling against the phone. When I move, he moves. But slower. And he smiles even when I don't. Something about those words made my ribs feel like they were closing in. Because, and I don't know why, I remembered being a kid and seeing something similar. I was about 8. I had this dream, or maybe it wasn't a dream, about waking up in the middle of the night and seeing someone kneeling beside my bed. At first I thought it was me in a mirror, but the room was too dark for a mirror. They just stared at me, smiling, and when I sat up, they leaned closer, like they'd been waiting for me to notice. I never told anyone. Not my dad, not my brothers, not my grandma. I thought it was one of those things you bury so deep you forget it's even there. Until now, I called it in, sent officers to Evan's address. While we waited, I kept him talking. I asked him about school, about what games he liked. His answers came out slow, careful, and the strange thing was when he spoke about himself, it sounded like pieces of my childhood. He said his favorite hiding place was in the coat closet with the door just barely cracked. That's where I used to hide during storms. He said he hated the sound of footsteps on the stairs after midnight. So did I, because it always meant my dad was drunk again. And then, almost too quietly to hear, he said, sometimes, I can hear him breathing even when I'm not in the room. The officers got there 8 minutes later. They knocked. No answer. They went inside. I listened over the open radio channel as they called out for him. Then silence. One of the officers finally came on, voice tight. Dispatch, we have a child here, but... A pause. He says he didn't call. I sat there frozen. They put Evan on the line, but his voice was different. Higher. Less steady. I didn't call you, he said. I was sleeping. Evan, are you sure? Yes. Then, after a moment, but he was here again. My skin went cold. The officers found no one under the bed. No sign of forced entry. They stayed with him until his mother got home from work, but by the time the line disconnected, I was barely breathing. Because here's the thing. The voice I'd heard tonight wasn't the same voice I was hearing now. This Evan sounded like a normal scared kid. The other one, the one from the calls, sounded like me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined a shape under my own bed. I'd hear the faint sound of breathing that wasn't mine. The next morning, I called in sick. But I didn't rest. I went through my old notebooks from when I was a kid. My grandma had saved some of them in a box. Flipping through, I found one page where I'd drawn a stick figure under a bed. The figure's face was wrong. The eyes were too big, the smile too wide. Underneath, in my sloppy 8-year-old handwriting, I'd written, "He's copying me." I don't remember drawing that. I don't even remember knowing those words back then. The following week, I got another call. Same silence at first. Same whisper. "I think he's learning," Evans said. Learning what? How to be me. My mouth went dry. What do you mean? He talks like me now. He says things I say. But sometimes, he says things I don't remember saying. Like what? He paused for a long time. Then, he said, "You called me once too." The room spun. I gripped the edge of my desk just to stay grounded. "Evan, I need you to tell me exactly what he said." He said, "I've been under your bed before." That was the moment I knew this wasn't about Evan anymore. This was something that connected us. Something that had been with me a long time. Something that never really left. And now, it had found someone else that I didn't want to pick up the call. It's strange to say that out loud, because that's the job. That's what I signed up for. But the phone was ringing in that way it sometimes does when you already know something's wrong before you even answer. Not because of the sound, because of the weight behind it. I pressed the headset to my ear and forced my voice steady. 911, what's your emergency? The line hissed. Then a soft whisper. It's still here. It was him, the boy. The last time I'd spoken to him, he'd been whispering about something in his room, something that breathed when he breathed, something that mirrored him. That was a week ago. The police check had come back empty. No signs of forced entry. No parents at home. No anything. And yet here he was again. Is this Tyler? I asked. My voice cracked slightly. He didn't answer that. Instead, there was a faint rustle, like fabric sliding over carpet. It's underneath now, he whispered. Underneath what? The bed. My throat tightened. I glanced at the clock. 2:46 a.m., same hour as last time. I swallowed hard. Tyler, is anyone in the house with you? He hesitated. Then, in the smallest voice. Yes. I stiffened. Who? Another pause. My headset picked up a faint, dragging sound, like nails lightly grazing wood. I don't know. Then, a beat later, quieter, but it's pretending to be me again. A ripple of cold worked its way down my arms. I scribbled on my notepad without even thinking. Mimic again? My handwriting was shaky. Tyler, I'm sending police. No. His voice spiked suddenly, panicked. You don't understand. If they come, it'll hide. And then it'll come back later. It's been doing this for years. Years. That word made my stomach drop. I asked him what he meant, but he didn't answer right away. There was shuffling, the creak of wood. I pictured him on his knees beside the bed, trying to see underneath, and my chest tightened. Then I heard him say something that made my skin crawl. It's saying your name now. I froze. What? He whispered again, but this time it wasn't quite his voice. It was slower, flatter, almost deliberate. Hello. My name. It was coming from the same line, the same headset speaker, but it wasn't Tyler. My throat went dry. Tyler, I told you it's not me, he said quickly, almost crying now. It listens when I talk to you. It remembers your voice. It knows how to make it sound real. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just listened to the line, to the faint sound of something breathing that wasn't the boy. The air felt heavy in my chest. I told him to stay on the line, that I was dispatching officers anyway. My voice was shaking as I radioed out the address. But in the background of my own words, I thought I heard it repeating me. Not perfectly, slightly distorted, slightly too slow. Stay on the line, it echoed. I've worked calls with people screaming, choking, dying. None of them got under my skin like this one. The officers radioed back 20 minutes later. They didn't see anyone. No forced entry. No signs of struggle. The kid was there, scared out of his mind, but unharmed. He refused to sleep in the house. They didn't hear anything under the bed. Of course they didn't. I tried to let it go. I told myself it was probably some kind of shared delusion. Kids pick up on tone, on stories, and maybe I was just feeding it. Maybe I'd given him too much attention the first time, and now he was performing for me. That's what I told myself. Until the next night. It was quiet in the room. The kind of quiet you only notice in dispatch. No traffic stops, no domestic calls, nothing. Then the phone lit up again. Same number, same hour. I answered. 911. What's your emergency? The voice on the other end said, I'm underneath now. And my blood turned to ice. Because it wasn't the boy's voice. It was mine. Perfectly mine. Every inflection, every rhythm. If someone played the recording back, they'd think I'd called myself. I didn't respond. I just stared at the console, the little green light blinking. Then it laughed. Not loud, just a slow, breathy sound. The call dropped. I didn't know what to do after that. I didn't even file the call officially. I told myself it was some kind of prank, some tech glitch. But I didn't believe it. When I got home that night, I left all the lights on. I'm not proud of that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that if I turned them off, I'd see something in the dark crouched low. Not in front of me. Not behind me. Underneath. I kept thinking about the boy. About the way he said it had been happening for years. About how, when I was his age, I had the same fear. I remember nights where I swore something was under my bed too. My mom said it was just the house settling. But there were moments, quiet, empty moments, where I thought I heard it breathing. And there were things it would whisper to me in the dark that I never told anyone. Like my name. Over and over. 2 days later, the boy called again. He was crying so hard, I could barely understand him. It's not under the bed anymore, he sobbed. Where is it? I asked. He didn't answer right away. I could hear him trying to catch his breath. Finally, he said, It's underneath you now. The line went dead. That night, I dreamed I was sitting at my dispatch console. The room was dark except for the glow of the screen. I looked down, and there was a gap beneath the desk I'd never noticed before. It was pitch black inside. I couldn't see the floor. Then, from that darkness, a hand slowly reached out. Not to grab me, to mimic me. It moved when I moved. Tilted its fingers the same way I tilted mine. And then it smiled. My smile. I woke up gasping. But the worst part wasn't a dream. The worst part was that I could still hear it breathing. Not loud. Not close. Just underneath. I haven't told anyone this, but I think it's getting braver. I'll be sitting at my desk, mid-shift, and I'll hear the faint scrape of something moving under me. Once, when I leaned down fast to check, I swore I saw a face in the shadows. It was gone before my eyes could adjust. I'm not sure how long I can keep taking these calls. Because each time I do, it feels less like I'm talking to a scared kid, and more like I'm talking to whatever's been with me since I was a kid. And if it really is underneath me now, I think one night soon, it's going to stop copying and start replacing that. I've taken hundreds of calls. Car wrecks, overdoses, fires. Most fade from memory after a while. But not this one. It was the kind of call where you know something is wrong before the person even speaks. Not because of what they say, but because of how they breathe. It was just after 2 a.m., a slow stretch of the night. The station lights hummed overhead, the kind of low sound that makes you feel like you're underwater. I was scrolling through old dispatch logs when the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency? For a few seconds, I thought no one was there. Then a faint inhale. Sharp, almost painful, like someone was breathing through clenched teeth. Hello, a man's voice whispered. I sat up straight. Sir, are you hurt? His breathing quickened. I'm stuck. I'm in a crawl space. Under my house. That wasn't something you hear every day. All right. Stay calm. What's your address? He gave it to me. Small rural road, about 15 minutes out. I typed it in, sending the coordinates to the nearest unit. What happened? I asked. I was checking some wiring. There was this smell, like something rotting. I wanted to see if maybe an animal died under here. And you got stuck? No, his voice cracked. I'm not alone down here. I felt my skin tighten. Sir, who else is there? He didn't answer right away. I heard shuffling, like cloth scraping wood. His whisper came again, but lower this time. They're above me. For a second, I thought he meant inside the house. You mean in the room above? A shaky exhale. No, on the floor, right above where I'm lying. Crawling. I stared at the monitor. My headset felt suddenly heavy. Sir, are you saying someone is crawling above you in the crawl space? Yes, he breathed. They're dragging themselves along the ceiling. Their face keeps dropping down between the beams. Watching me. Something in my gut nodded. I glanced at the map. There was no upstairs in that house. Just a single story. Crawl space beneath, attic above. That was it. All right. I need you to listen to me, I said, keeping my voice steady. Officers are on their way. Can you move toward the entrance? He let out a choked laugh. No. If I move, it moves. Every time I try, it gets closer. It's faster than me. I try to picture it. A man belly down in the dirt. Someone else scraping along just inches above. The sound alone would be unbearable. What does it look like? I asked. I don't want to look again, he whispered. But then there was this sound over the line. Not static. Not interference. It was a slow inhale, exhale. But it wasn't coming from him. It was deeper. Wet. Like whoever was above him was breathing straight into the phone. My throat went dry. Sir, do you have your phone's flashlight? Yes. Turn it on. Point it toward where you last saw them. There was fumbling, a metallic clang as his elbow hit a pipe. Then, silence. Sir. He was breathing fast now. It's gone. I don't see it. That should have been a good thing. But the way he said it, almost panicked, made my chest tighten. You need to move toward the exit now, I said, my own voice quieter than before. No, he hissed. It's not gone. And then, in this trembling whisper, he added, I can feel it underneath me. I froze. Underneath. Yes. In the dirt. My stomach, it's pushing up from below. That didn't make sense. There was no below in a crawl space. Just the ground. But before I could say anything, there was this sharp, muffled thump in the background, like a fist hitting wood. He gasped. It's digging, he said. I could hear it now, too. A slow, deliberate scraping, like nails raking through soil. I looked over at the nearest officer's location on my screen. Still 10 minutes out. Sir, stay as still as you can. Can you tell me, is there any way someone could be in the ground under your house? No, I don't, he trailed off, his breathing jagged. Wait, what? I can see a hand. I pressed the headset tighter to my ear. What kind of hand? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was smaller. It's not a hand. What is it? It's backwards. I don't know why that word hit me so hard. But the way he said it, like it barely came out of his mouth, made me cold all over. Sir, listen to me. You need to get to the entrance. Now, do not look at it again. Just move. I could hear him scrambling, dirt shifting, wood creaking. Then a sudden, guttural scream tore through the line, not his. It was low, drawn out, vibrating in my ears like it was inside my own head. Sir, talk to me. But all I heard was him panting, his voice breaking apart. It grabbed my ankle. I tried to keep my voice calm. Kick free. Crawl toward the light. The officers are almost there. No, it's pulling me. And then nothing. The line didn't drop. I could still hear something. Not his voice. Just this wet dragging sound. And that breathing. I sat there, frozen, until I saw the officer's unit arrive on my screen. I kept calling his name, but it was like shouting into an empty tunnel. When the officers radioed back, their voices were tense. They said they'd searched the crawl space and found no one. Not him. Not anyone else. Just the phone, lying face down in the dirt. And they said this like they didn't believe it themselves. The soil under where the phone had been was loose. Freshly dug. Like something had been moving under there. I filed the call. I followed protocol. But for the rest of the night, I kept hearing that breathing. And the more I think about it, the more I realize. It wasn't coming from under him. It wasn't coming from above him. It was coming from the line itself. When I took over the morning shift, the board was quiet. Just the hum of the overhead lights, the faint smell of burnt coffee from the pot in the break room. I was still half in that fog you get when you've been awake since before sunrise. Not tired, exactly, but not quite all the way present either. The first call I took was routine. A car stalled near the freeway ramp. Then a minor fender bender. Then silence. I thought about the man from last night. The crawlspace guy. His breathing. The way he whispered like even the air was dangerous to disturb. I checked the notes from the overnight dispatch, hoping for closure. A resolved call. A final status. Something. But the screen just had 3 words in bold, blinking slowly. Call disconnected. Pending. No update. No confirmation. No address ping. I told myself it happens sometimes. Phones die. Batteries die. People hang up when they panic. But the thing was, he hadn't sounded like someone who could just get up and walk away. It was around 9:42 when the call came in again. Same number. Same weird carrier tag in the system. Unregistered. Unknown origin. That alone made the back of my neck tighten. We'd had spoofed numbers before, sure, but this one didn't even bounce off a tower like it should. It just appeared. I put my headset back on, heart picking up without my permission. 911. What's your... She's right above me. It was him. The same ragged breathing. The same whisper so faint, I had to press the earpiece tighter against my head just to catch it. My throat went dry. Sir, it's me, the dispatcher from last night. I'm here to help you. I just need you to tell me. Don't talk so loud, he hissed. She hears it. She moves when you talk. I lower my voice automatically, the way you do without thinking. Okay, I'm going to speak very quietly. I need to know exactly where you are. We can send help, but we have to know. I told you. I'm under the house. In the crawl space. I can see the light coming through the boards. But his voice thinned, like he was straining to hear something else. She's moving. Above me. Right now. There was a faint noise in the background. Not movement exactly, but shift in air. Like when someone walks across old wood and the beams groan just a little. Sir, I want you to listen to me, I whispered. Stay as still as you can. I'm tracing the call. Just keep describing what's happening. Silence. Then, so softly I almost missed it, she's crawling. The word hit me harder than I expected. Crawling. Not walking. Not running. Crawling. Every muscle in my body went tight. What do you mean crawling? The phone crackled, like his hand was shaking. On her hands. I can hear the bones or something. The way they click when she moves. I opened the incident log, started typing, flagging it for immediate response. I pulled up the coordinates our system was trying to scrape from the signal and frowned. The location pin was in the middle of an empty field. No house, no street, no crawl space, just dirt. I muted my mic for a second and leaned toward Marcus, who was manning the next station. Can you check this? I slid the screen toward him. This call's pinging here, but there's nothing. He squinted at it, clicked around, tried the secondary locator. Same result. No structures within 100 yards, he murmured. Could be bad GPS. Could be he trailed off. He didn't need to finish. I unmuted. Sir, I'm having trouble locating you. Can you tell me the address? Even a street name. I already told you. I can't see it from here. I came in through the vent. His voice faltered. It wasn't supposed to close behind me. I could hear the tremor in his breath, the claustrophobic panic he was fighting to keep under control. Okay, then tell me what's above you. What room are you under? Another pause. Then, almost like a confession, it's not a room. I can see the underside of the floor. But it's wrong. It's too close. My stomach dropped. What do you mean too close? He swallowed audibly. The boards are almost touching my face. But when I look through the gaps, it's not insulation. It's empty. Like another space. She's in there. Watching. A shiver ran through me, even though the room was warm. Sir, you said you could see light before. Is there still light? No, not anymore. The call was still too faint for our system to give me clean audio levels, so I reached over and maxed the volume. That's when I heard it. A sound beneath his whisper. A slow, deliberate drag. With flexing underweight. He wasn't lying. I stood halfway out of my chair. Marcus, get units to sweep the coordinates anyway. Call it a welfare check. Marcus was already on the radio. Sir, I whispered, we have help on the way. I just need you to keep talking to me until they get there. He breathed out like he was trying not to choke. She stopped. Okay, that's good. That means she's listening. I froze. Neither of us said anything for a few seconds. Then, very softly, like he was speaking into the floor. I think she's facing me now. I clenched my jaw because I could feel it, the weight of being watched, even from miles away. Sir, I want you to close your eyes and stay still. Don't look at her. Don't give her a reason to. A sharp creak cut me off. It let out a sound, not quite a gasp, more like a reflex. She's moving again. His whisper broke. She's coming down. I gripped the mic so hard my knuckles hurt. Coming down from where? The space. Above me. I can hear her nails on the boards. There was another sound, closer, sharper this time. A scrape that made my teeth ache. I mouthed to Marcus. ETA. He held up 3 fingers. 3 minutes. 3 minutes felt like hours. Sir, you need to tell me if there's any way for you to get out. Any opening. There's one, he breathed. Behind me. But it's small. I'd have to turn my back to her. My mind was moving fast, calculating. Do you think you can make it before she reaches you? I don't know. The scrape came again, followed by a soft thud. She's in the crawl space now, he whispered. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath until my chest started to hurt. Go, I said. Go now. There was a shuffle of movement, the muffled grunt of someone trying to move fast in a tight space. His breathing spiked, ragged and fast. Then a sharp, short cry. What happened? I hissed. She touched my foot. My whole body went cold. Keep moving. Don't stop. There was another sound over the line, a breath that wasn't his. It was wet, almost trembling, like whoever it belonged to was smelling the air. Then, a whisper. Not his. So faint I almost thought I imagined it. Don't leave. I yanked the headset off one ear, my pulse in my throat. Sir. The line went dead. I stared at the call screen, waiting for it to reconnect. It didn't. Marcus's radio crackled. Dispatch. We're at the coordinates. No house. No structures. Just a flat lot. Over. Marcus and I locked eyes. He pressed his mic. Copy that. Can you sweep the area? Another pause. Then, we've walked the whole perimeter. Nothing here but dirt and weeds. Over. I muted my line and sat back slowly, my skin prickling. Somewhere out there, a man was trapped in a space that didn't exist. And something was in there with him. And the worst part? It knew my voice that I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard it. Faint, labored breathing in my head. Like it was right behind me. It wasn't real, I told myself. I'd been on edge for hours. I was tired. My brain was replaying the call over and over. But I couldn't shake it. When I got back to work the next night, I pulled up the recording again. The one from the man who swore someone was crawling above him. The line clicked. His voice came through, shaky but desperate. She's right above me. She's crawling. Then that sound. The same wet, dragging shuffle. The same hollow knocks. And beneath it, just barely there, a woman's voice. Not speaking. Not whispering. More like humming. It wasn't in any language I knew. Just a low, trembling sound that seemed to loop like a broken lullaby. The part that kept gnawing at me. The location he gave didn't exist. There was no unit above his. No attic, no crawl space. Just roofing. But there was something I'd been avoiding. Something I didn't want to think about. I'd been inside that building before. Not for work. Not for a call. Years ago, my uncle lived there. And I remembered the strange little vent in his ceiling. I asked about it once, and he brushed it off. Old houses have weird air ducts. But I was a kid, and kids notice things adults ignore. Like how, some nights, that vent would smell like dirt and mold. And how, once, I saw something move inside it. I told myself it was a rat. But rats don't hum lullabies. By the middle of my shift, I'd made a decision. I'd drive by after work. Just to, I don't know, look at the building. Prove to myself there was nothing there. It was still dark when I pulled up. No lights in the windows. No cars in the lot except one old truck. And then I saw it. The vent. Up high, just under the roofline. Same spot I remembered from my uncle's place. But it wasn't an air vent. Not really. It was small. Narrow. Like an opening for something, someone, to slip through. I stood there staring, my breath fogging in the cold air. That's when I noticed movement. A shadow behind the slats. Slow. Careful. I thought it was my eyes playing tricks. But then the shadow tilted. Turned. and I saw the faint outline of a face pressed against the vent from inside. Not watching the street. Watching me. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even call it in. I just drove home. Sat in my car for an hour before I could make myself go inside. The next night, though, I couldn't resist checking the property records. Old habit from dispatch work. If you want to find trouble, follow the paperwork. The building was old. Older than I thought. Built in 1929. Original blueprints scanned into the archive. And there it was, right in black and white. A crawl space. Not in the ceiling. Not under the floor. Running between the walls. 3 feet high. Stretching across the whole top level of the building. But the weirdest part? The space wasn't listed in any renovations after 1974. Like they decided it didn't exist. I couldn't stop digging. The first police report I found was from 1972. Missing person. A woman named Clara Wells. Lived in the building. Last seen going upstairs to her apartment. Never came out again. 2 more disappearances after that. 1973, 1974. All from the same floor. Then the crawl space stopped being mentioned entirely. Like someone had sealed it up. But if it was sealed, who or what was crawling around in there now? I thought about telling my supervisor. But how do you explain something like that without sounding insane? Hey, I think there's a woman humming inside the walls of an apartment building that technically has no walls. Instead, I called the number from the original dispatch. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, hello. His voice was quiet. Weak. It's me, I said. The dispatcher from the other night. Are you okay? There was a long pause. Then he whispered, she's still here. I froze. She's in the walls, he said. She moves when I'm asleep. Sometimes she breathes with me. Same time, same rhythm. His voice cracked. Last night, she was humming. And then, I felt her hand come through the vent. I asked him if he could leave the building. She won't let me, he said. She told me I belong here now. That was the last thing he said before the line went dead. I tried calling back. No answer. By the time I got an officer to check, the door was locked from the inside. No one came when they knocked. No sounds. No movement. Just silence. The official report called it no contact, but I knew better. That night, I kept hearing the humming. Not from my headset, not from the recording, from somewhere above the dispatch floor. At first, I thought maybe it was the air ducts. Old buildings carry sound in strange ways. But when I followed the sound during my break, it led me to the far corner of the building, to a panel in the ceiling. The kind of panel you could push up and slip through if you really wanted to. I don't remember deciding to move the chair under it. I don't remember climbing up. I just remember the smell. Dirt. Mold. Something else, sweet but rotten. I lifted the panel and aimed my phone light inside. 3 feet of space. Low wooden beams. Black plastic sheeting lining the floor. And in the beam of my light, a single handprint. Small. Pressed deep into the dust. The fingers were too long, and they were pointing toward me. I dropped the panel and stumbled back. The humming stopped. But before I climbed down, I swear I heard movement. Not crawling. Not dragging. Just repositioning. Like whatever was in there had just turned to face the hatch. I called off sick the next night. I couldn't bring myself to sit in that building with the ceiling right above me. But it didn't matter. The humming followed me home. I don't know how I know it's the same sound, but I do. It's quieter now, like it's farther away. But every night, it's getting closer,